This story begins with the emperor wanting to forget his life in such a position. Why? Because he no longer wants to live his life the way it should be lived. From now on, he's going to be free. And even the heavens will be subject to his sword, a mysterious little peak. A tired guy can barely climb the mountain. His legs and arms are out of control, and finally he makes it to the top. A completely exhausted guy falls to the ground near the monument, and grasps the medallion with his hand. He could hardly breathe and suddenly remembered the promise he'd made to Lien. The boy had only been able to fulfill it halfway, and it was bothering him. The boy remembered that he was an emperor. A memory from his childhood came to mind, where Emperor Han Wu had asked him what he thought of power. The boy was very young, and his name was Zhu. Little Zhu replied to the emperor that maybe the power was the flowers. Han Wu was surprised by such a question, and asked the boy why he thought so. Then Zhu began to explain that from the noble to the commoner, everyone was talking about it. Everyone gathers all over the capital for this, and if power isn't flowers, what else could it be? Emperor Han Wu was very happy to hear this from little Zhu. Out of happiness, he picked him up in his arms and started shouting that his grandson was very clever. However, the emperor tempered his emotions and told the boy that even though the flowers were bright and colorful, they could wither away as if they never existed. Eventually Han Wu's grandfather, who had no suitable heir, passed the throne to the boy Zhu. And as someone whose existence for Zhu was no different from that of Mount Tai, even Grandpa Han Wu could not escape his imminent fate. It was Zhu who couldn't escape his inevitable fate. The boy remembered Prince Yen shouting that he didn't understand how the late emperor could entrust the fate of the empire to such a lowly person. Yen said that if Zhu really cared about this country and people, then instead of sitting on the throne, he should find a suitable place for scum like him. These words hurt little Zhu a lot. He didn't understand why his uncle was saying such terrible things. The uncle went to war against his own nephew. He wanted Zhu to get his ass out of the palace so he could take over. It was a coup caused by a blood relative. Many people died as a result. During the massacre, old man Lien tried to protect and hide Zhu. The uncle's army chased after the boy to destroy him, and then Master Lien sent Zhu out of the palace by a secret route. Lien gave him instructions for the lad to get to the top of a mysterious little peak on Mount Tai. Lien said that Zhu should find a small stone monument and hang the emperor's token on it, and then the two men who served Emperor Han Wu would definitely help Zhu. However, the boy cried and replied that he didn't understand how he could continue to live this miserable life. Lien started shaking the guy and yelling for him to come to his senses. Since surviving was the only way to fulfill the royal decree and honor Grandpa Han Wu's memory, Lien looked into Zhu's eyes with great hope. He asked the boy to make a promise that he would survive. Tears streamed down the frightened boy's face, but he pulled himself together and promised Lien that he would survive. Zhu galloped forward, and Lien wished him luck on his journey. An exhausted Zhu lay by the stone monument, and said that if he could be reborn instead of a flower that could wither at any moment, he wanted to be born a free butterfly. Zhu closed his eyes and whispered that it looked like that was all he could do, and he was sorry. Zhu remembers everything that happened next as if it was yesterday. The basics of soul summoning and spirit binding, and the 2 demon soul pills stored in the secret vault of the fire-worshipping cult. The day those things stole them. If His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor had not favored Zhu from the beginning, he would no longer exist in this world. Huino and his accomplice Wano were preparing a vessel. The vessel was Zhu's body. Huino removed the guy's epithelium and shaved off the skeleton. He inserted ivory under the nasal cartilage and grafted back the removed epithelium, then injected a dozen kinds of elixirs and poisonous juices into the guy, melted his bones and erased his outline again. Since Huino was already old, he had to constantly reconstruct himself, so there was not a single mistake in the surgical procedure. Huino informed Wano that the preparation of the vessel was complete. Wano thanked him for his excellent work, and said that the late Heavenly Emperor would have been delighted too. Wano then looked up into the sky and asked if His Majesty was ready to welcome his new life. Immediately, a celestial demon appeared. The demon began to shout how dare Wano bother him at all, and why he had awakened him. Wano pointed at Zhu's body and told the demon that he wanted to give him a new life. The sky demon began to laugh loudly and angrily replied, "No." Wano was confused, as he had not expected such an answer. He asked the demon that didn't he want a chance at a new life. The sky demon replied that he didn't want to become human. The demon didn't want to experience boredom and loneliness again, as even in hell it would be much more interesting than being human. So the demon got angry and started yelling for Wano to never summon him again, and if he summoned him again for that reason, he would kill them all. Wano realized that he had to come up with some sort of ruse to get the demon to agree, since if he left now, it was all for nothing. And then he looked the demon straight in his burning eyes and called him an idiot. Fury immediately seized the demon. The demon began screaming that Wano had just asked for his death, and he would destroy him right here and now. Wano went on to say that if the demon is indeed a celestial demon, then he really is an idiot for being ignorant of the world around him. The demon was about to destroy the old man, and then Wano spoke a name, Zhang Sanfeng. Wano began to tell me that an extraordinary ascetic named Zhang Sanfeng had appeared in this generation, and he is even extolled as more perfect than Dharma. The heavenly demon was greatly surprised and said that he had never heard the name of this child. Wano continued to manipulate, and told the demon that the people of this generation said that no matter how strong a heavenly demon was, it couldn't stand up to Sage Sanfeng for a second. The demon was filled with anger. He could not understand what kind of idiots people could say and come up with such nonsense. Then Wano explained to the demon about development. He said that perhaps the demon was the best in his time, but the Murim people had perfected their martial arts step by step, and the current generation was facing a martial arts development that could not be compared to the demon generation. And so Wano proposed to the demon to become unrivaled then and now, the strongest among generations. Then the demon approached Zhu's body and asked how old the child was. Wano replied that he was 20. The demon smiled and replied that in that case this guy would live for at least another 100 years. And he was very lucky that the demon would take care of him. The demon began to shout that if the people of this generation were truly strong, then he would hone his skills and prove that he was the best in all generations. The demon was going to show everyone why he was a celestial demon. He also promised to encourage Wano when he did. At that same second began to penetrate the boy's body. Wano began shouting for Wino to bring the demon's soul pill. Wano had placed the pill in the boy's mouth to revive not a demon, but their master. Not a second later, Zhu opened his eyes. He grabbed his head and started screaming. Wano and Wino tried to understand what had happened. They hoped they had revived the master. Zhu yelled that he was hearing voices and his head hurt like it was going to explode. Wano began to examine the body to see what was happening, and then Wano realized that right now in this body, the master was talking to a heavenly demon. The fundamental principle had failed. The heavenly demon failed to take full control of the master. A clash of consciousness is something that shouldn't have happened. Wano realized that if this continued, the master's mind would be destroyed. Wino suggested sending back the celestial demon, but Wano replied that he didn't know how to do that. While Wano and Wino were thinking about what to do to keep from killing their master's consciousness, the Zhu boy's body was literally being torn apart. Wano was sure that the demonic essence of the celestial demon and the master's consciousness had collided, and then he remembered the demonic nature. Wano told Wino that he had another demon's soul pill and they could try again. With the pill, he hoped to suppress the heavenly demon's demonic nature. Wino started shouting that it was very dangerous, and there was no telling what the consequences would be. Wano explained that they would place another person in the master's body, another legendary character of the orthodox Murim. Wino replied that it was sheer folly to try to neutralize the two natures by summoning a character to suppress demonic energy. Wano began to shout that they didn't have time, so it was worth a try, and the outcome would depend only on the heavens. Demonic nature, heavenly nature, and an emperor. Whoever appeared must be someone from the heavens. Wino and Wano took a chance. Suddenly their eyes opened. The boy said he was hungry and asked them to bring him something to eat. The old men brought him a lot of food, but the boy couldn't get enough. Wino and Wano still didn't know if they could do it. However, at this time while Zhu was eating, the real negotiation between the heavenly demon and the Shaolin temple patriarch was taking place in his mind. The sky demon was yelling and angry that he had been placed in such a cramped place. The patriarch behaved much more politely, and told the demon that he looked much better than he had been told about. Zhu in turn ordered them both to shut up, this way they are not alone in this body, and besides, the body belongs to him. The demon was even more annoyed by this. He didn't understand why Zhu didn't feel the hellish pain of his presence in his body, as the guy's head should be splitting apart. Zhu explained that it was much more tolerable this time than after the first pill. The voices in my head are annoying, of course, but now it's not so annoying. The demon couldn't stand it and lost his temper. He asked the guy how dare he even talk to him like that. But Zhu immediately ordered him to shut up, as the noise in his head would make them all suffer together. Meanwhile, Huino and Wano were watching from the sidelines. They couldn't understand what was even going on with this body and mind. Zhu decided to somehow quiet the voices in his head, and suggested they pick a name they would all be called together. The patriarch offered a couple of options, but they didn't seem cool to the guy. The demon intervened and said that this old geezer had no idea what coolness was. Zhu told the demon to give his options or shut up forever. Then the demon got angry and suggested the name Iron-Blooded Azura. Zhu replied that he wanted a name, not some foreign title. The guy also added that he doesn't understand how such an ignorant idiot became the strongest in the world at all. The demon was overcome with anger. He became furious, and said that he would take possession of the body right away. However, all his attempts were in vain. He didn't understand why Zhu was still okay. And then he realized that it was all because of the idiot patriarch. He's preventing the demon from controlling this body. The demon didn't know what to do anymore, but one thing was clear: in terms of numbers, he was losing. He realized that if he couldn't get his body under control, he had no choice but to cooperate with them first. But all in good time. Meanwhile, the boy was thinking about what name to give himself, because it would be weird to use his name Shu, and the demon made a promise to himself that he would definitely swallow this body whole, and prove to the world who was the most powerful here. The boy turned to the demon and asked what he was muttering to himself. The demon smiled and replied that he was thinking about a battle name. He suggested that the guy should be called the Sky Destroyer. Zhu thought about it, and he really liked the name. After that, Zhu got ready to set out on his journey. The brothers' old men started asking the guy where he was going. The guy looked at them and asked what didn't he say he was going to wander around the Murim. The old men began to discourage him as he had not yet taken the time to recover his martial art. Zhu replied that he had all the martial arts of Heavenly Demon and Patriarch Huining stored in his head, and he could just try his strength on the road. The old men were still trying to stop the guy, in which case Zhu decided to use the Heavenly Demon martial art to show his strength. Wano asked Huino what would happen now. He replied that it remained to be seen, since the master was already out of their control. Wano replied that it wasn't as scary as the fact that they released a real bomb into Murim. The days flew by and winter came. Wano and Huino worried about whether master was doing well and where he was. Wano said that this guy looked a lot like the late emperor, and he shouldn't have forgotten the scriptures. Meanwhile, the blue-faced demon King Gump was on the battlefield telling the bastards of the Orthodox faction that no matter how hard they tried, they wouldn't be able to break their spirit. The chief of the Northern Blade Association approached Gumpa and said that although he had the spirit of a martial artist, but that was where his luck ended. Gump looked him in the eyes and asked if they were the ones who had originally acted with their power. And he also added that the Northern Blade Association may be the dominant force in Jiangzhou, but he is also a disciple of the Great School. Gump got angry and told the ringleader to go and tell this to the head of the association, that one day the day would come when Gump would end his life. The ringleader smiled and replied that no such day would come, as they had spread out the net of heaven and earth to catch all 7 demon Wei kings, and people like Gump should be grateful for such treatment at all. Gump replied that their network was nothing to him. The ringleader looked him in the eye and told him to stop pretending, as they knew all about his plan. Afterward, he praised Gump for his bravery and for making a commotion to distract them and let his brothers escape. But Gump had met the wrong opponent to be so led. And then there was a sound, and the ringleader said that it meant that the Gump brothers had already gone to the underworld. Gump lost his temper and attacked the ringleader for their decision to destroy all the seeds of the demonic path. However, during the battle, the head of the association clearly had the advantage. He said that getting rid of such seeds was the most correct solution. But Gump didn't give up hope. He believed that the very Grand Master of the demonic path, Heck, would come to the rescue. The head of the association started laughing loudly. He bent down to Gumpa and said that he was about to tell him a secret. The head told him that the Sword King of the Northern Sea and the Killer of the Azure Sea had turned away. And then the head asked Gump that did he really think that the Grand Master of the demonic path would be able to do anything under such circumstances. After all, even now that they are dying, the Grand Master is not taking any action, so there is no hope for him. However, Gump didn't give up. He replied to the chapter that there would come a time when he and his brothers in the demonic path would shed bloody tears at any cost. The head ordered his warriors to deal with Gump as he was talking too much. The warriors pounced on him, but Gump gathered all his last strength and used the art of the Thunder Blade, a brutal demonic force. He fought honorably and scattered all the warriors, when suddenly 3 unknown people shouted to him from the back that did he still have internal energy left to use aura chi amplification. Gump immediately applied an attack towards them, but saw that they blocked his enhanced blade chi with their enhanced sword chi. Just then, Gump realized that it was the 3 Tian Shan swordsmen. One of the swordsmen said that Gump was now the last of the 7 kings of the Demon King clan's demonic path, and today's hunt will end after the swordsmen eliminate him. Gump replied that such meanness as hunting a man was to be expected from the scum of the orthodox warriors. The swordsman replied that he was already overworked from all this, and it would be wonderful if Gump died now. After saying that, the swordsman used the invisible sword net technique. Gump realized that he couldn't handle it, and in his head he said that he would soon come to his brothers. Gump gathered his strength, and used the Thunder Blade art one last strike, followed by a bottomless lightning bolt. However, even that was no longer enough. Just as suddenly, someone threw away Gump's sword and the swordsman's blades. No one could understand what had happened. Unexpectedly, Zhu showed up. He said that he had been watching the fight, and it was interesting. But Zhu also said that they were all acting arrogant, and was it just because they were martial arts masters? The swordsman and Gump couldn't figure out who this guy was, or how he managed to steal their weapons in the blink of an eye. Gump couldn't stand it, and asked the guy who he was and how dare he pull such idiotic pranks. Zhu smiled and replied that he wasn't pulling any pranks. He had simply stolen the martial artist's weapons. Isn't that the biggest insult to them? Suddenly, one of the swordsmen intervened and shouted that this guy was just a youngster who had milk on his lips. However, his brother stopped the swordsman. Tianshan's second swordsman named Ha stepped forward and asked the guy if he could get his name. Zhu smiled and replied that he was a heavenly demon caster, or rather a heavenly destroyer. At that moment, the demon in the guy's head was proud that he had listened to him after all and taken that wonderful name. The second swordsman immediately recognized the celestial destroyer, and said that he also knew him as Ilshimishil, the celestial demon caster. Suddenly, Gump intervened and called the swordsmen idiots for presenting themselves in front of this guy. And then the second swordsman asked Zhu how dare he try to deceive him, and tried to introduce himself as a heaven breaker. The swordsman concluded that the guy was also one of those who practiced the demonic way, and ordered him to be killed. The swordsman vowed to kill these two, no matter what the cost. Meanwhile, the demon in the guy's head hoped he wouldn't just sit idly by. Zhu replied to the demon that he wasn't going to die a vain death, and especially not after surviving this hellish time. The swordsman attacked the guy at this time. However, his blow flew through the guy and did not cause any injury. That got the guy fired up, and he joined the fight. Meanwhile, the demon was yelling at him that he wasn't even using half of his power. Zhu ordered him to shut up. The swordsman attacked the guy from all sides. Suddenly the second swordsman prepared to strike him from the back. He was sure he would destroy this guy. The swordsman struck a blow. Suddenly, Zhu picked up his brother's body and asked the other swordsman why he had made such a mockery of him. Because you can't cut your own allies. Fury gripped the swordsman. He ordered his warriors not to stop in any case and to continue to press the numbers. Suddenly, Zhu approached the swordsman and said that he seemed to enjoy fighting under numerical superiority. The swordsman couldn't understand how this guy appeared in front of his nose completely unnoticed, and what surprised him even more was the unusual stance the guy took to apply some technique. Meanwhile, the demon inside the guy was cheering that he was now using the very technique. Zhu used the martial art that is the symbol of the demon. Gathering all the strength in his body, Zhu used the heavenly demonic rift. Gump simply couldn't believe his eyes. The swordsman decided that it was some sort of illusion technique since it was completely impossible. Then Zhu suggested that they see for themselves. The second swordsman lost his temper and started shouting that Tianshan's 3 swordsmen would never fall for a simple illusion technique and pounced on the guy. Zhu destroyed all the warriors and wounded the swordsmen. The latter were frightened and rushed to flee without finishing the battle. The demon asked the guy that if he was going to leave it like that. Zhu replied that he was fed up, and that was enough for today. Gump heard this conversation. Rage swept over him and he started yelling that was the guy going to end it just because he was fed up. But Gump couldn't believe his eyes that an incredible man had appeared in this upside-down Murim world. Meanwhile, the demon couldn't be happy that Jews still had the qualities to follow him, and not this holier-than-thou patriarch. Suddenly Gump threw himself at Zhu's feet, calling him a great warrior. He begged to be allowed to go with him. Zhu started laughing loudly and called him a hairy old man, adding that it would never happen. The guy disappeared over the horizon. A short time later, word was already rife in Kaifeng that Murim had been turned upside down. 2,000 swordsmen of the Northern Blade Association and 500 martial artists of the Orthodox Forces Union who went on a hunt for the 7 kings of the demonic path destroyed 6 out of 7 kings. It was no wonder that the Orthodox sects prevailed over the 7 kings of the demonic path. But the second news that followed, this began to cause Murim to become confused. The appearance of the celestial demon caster, celestial destroyer. He was the one who had slaughtered 528 people from the Northern Blade Association and 127 people from the 9 Orthodox Alliance. The appearance of a demon god. At this time, Zhu was in Kaifeng and he happened to hear these rumors. Someone even said that everyone who had seen the heavenly destroyer had died. Someone claimed he was so scary and had a face like the devil himself. Unexpectedly, one of the guys said that Tianshan's second swordsman who managed to come back alive said that the Heaven Breaker was handsome and young. The guys then discussed that at any rate, the Northern Blade Association had already dispatched an investigation team, and it looked like there was going to be a bloody war in Murima. The demon inside the guy was just cheering at this time that everyone was making a fuss because of them. He shouted that this was just a magnificent appearance of the Heaven Breaker. Zhu immediately ordered him to shut up and said that he felt like he had just been dragged into a pointless fight. The demon began to say that he did not understand why the guy was uncomfortable, because he even changed his clothes. The patriarch replied to the demon that Zhu didn't mean that at all. Zhu started yelling for them both to shut up as they were creating too much noise in his head. After that, the guy said that at any rate, since that bastard second swordsman knows him by sight, he can disguise himself now. The patriarch turned to the guy and suggested that instead of disguising himself, he should just change his impression of himself. Zhu hesitated for a moment. After that, the guy went to the neutral inn's pavilion. There he was met by a nice young girl waitress and greeted him. Zhu asked her to bring him a bottle of alcohol and some simple appetizers. The girl didn't take her eyes off him. Zhu rudely asked the girl why she kept staring at his face. The girl was embarrassed and apologized. Zhu at this time couldn't understand what was going on, and hoped she didn't know him. The girl apologized and explained that in her 10 years as a waitress, this was the first time she had seen such a handsome customer. And then Zhu exhaled. The girl then asked him to wait for a few seconds, and she would serve him his order. After a few seconds, Zhu was already drinking the alcohol. However, he smelled a pungent odor and noticed that it tasted different from the alcohol he drank in the palace. At this point, the patriarch told the guy that although he doesn't know what alcohol tastes like, he assumes it's one of those things that brings joy to commoners. The patriarch asked Zhu how he was feeling and if the flavor of the alcohol from the Murim was different. And then the guy told me that he had many opportunities to try alcohol, but he didn't like it, and the only one who liked to drink was his uncle. But for Zhu, alcohol always tasted bitter. Then the patriarch told the guy that from what he heard, mental illness must have made alcohol bitter for Zhu. It was the first time the boy had heard of the soul disease. And the patriarch said that since Zhu had inevitably committed murder, no one else could pay for his sins. So the patriarch asked the guy not to make stupid mistakes by engaging in avoidable combat and committing senseless murders. And afterward the patriarch asked the lad, by doing so, will not the day come when he will be able to feel the sweetness of alcohol? Suddenly, a demon intervened and began to shout that all this was like something a crusty old monk would say. And anyway, how could the patriarch know the taste of alcohol? The demon kept shouting that if you don't kill first, they will kill you. And this applies not only to the Murim, but to the whole world. The patriarch told the demon that this is the first time Zhu has committed such overkill since coming to the Murim. And the demon should show him some generosity and learn to understand the guy. At this time, the guy was thinking about the fact that he had never imagined that the heavenly demon's martial arts would be so strong. This was the first time Zhu felt so free. However, He realized that if he only used this power for his own benefit, how was he different from his uncle? And then Zhu turned to the patriarch and said that when his drinks became sweet, he would be sure to pour some for him as well. The patriarch smiled and replied that he couldn't drink alcohol. And sure enough, Zhu remembered that the patriarch was a monk. Suddenly the demon asked the guy to be more careful as someone was approaching him. Suddenly, an unknown guy appeared in front of Zhu. Zhu immediately realized that he was a member of the Southern Blade Coalition. And then the guy introduced himself. He said his name is Tan Zhong and he's from Sichuan province. Zhu couldn't understand what was going on. Then Jung asked him to join his company. The guy assessed the appearance of everyone in the company, and assumed they were the same age as him. He also noticed that there were martial artists there, so Zhu thought that since he was bored anyway, it might be worth it to join them and get some information. Zhu replied to Zhong that he would love to join them. Then Zhong brought him into the company, and invited everyone to introduce themselves. The first to introduce himself was Hekrian Namgung, who had received the honorary title of White Sword Divine Dragon. Then the Gaiping, known as the Iron Bloody Fist, gave his name. Hekrian's sister introduced herself next. The girl said her name was Ayan Namgung, and she was honored to meet the young master. And only another sister in this family named Hemi Namgung couldn't understand what it was about this guy that everyone was so excited about. A few more people then introduced themselves, and Hekrian said that they had enough introductions on their part, and now they would like Zhu to introduce himself. Zhu smiled and said that they all looked like descendants of prestigious martial clans, so he didn't understand how to behave since they all treated him very hospitable. And after saying that, Zhu introduced himself by the name of Yun, and said that he was a scholar who wandered here and there. The demon was of course angry that Zhu had come up with such a horrible name after being called the Heaven Destroyer. Originally, the Heaven Breaker thought that these guys were ordinary Murim residents who were the same age as him. But after hearing their introductions, he realized that these 4 gentlemen and 4 ladies were suddenly people of high status. Unlike the Northern Blade Association and the Southern Blade Coalition, they belonged to a much more powerful force, namely the Orthodox faction. This faction is known for its righteous deeds. The faction consists of a league of 5 clans, and the pillars of the league are the famous Namgong clan, the Tang clan of Sichuan, the Ping clan of Hebei, the Yan clan of Jingzhou, and the famous Murim clan. And to summarize, these teens turned out to be hopeful young men responsible for the future of the 5 clans league. Hekrian asked the guy what brought him to Kaifeng's house, since it was quite far from Chengdu and Jiangnan. When the demon heard this, he was surprised, for Zhu had claimed that he knew nothing about Mirima. Zhu replied to the demon that when he was emperor, he had memorized the map of the continent by heart. Peng intervened in the conversation and told the guy that he still wouldn't understand who they were, so he explained that they belonged to an organization called the League of 5 Clans. Suddenly, Hemi said that this place might be the headquarters of the beggar sect, but it was also the base of the Northern Blade Association. Zhu thanked for such information. In his head he couldn't believe that Kaifeng was the base of the Northern Blade Association. So the guy asked the guys what their gathering there had to do with the fact that it was the base of the Northern Blade Association. Hemi replied that he was a rather curious fellow, and told him in a gruff tone that this meeting was because the Northern Blade Association would be holding a grand banquet for the Orthodox faction representatives. Suddenly Hekrian intervened and asked Hemi not to be rude to their guest. Zhu decided to clarify, meaning that because of the Orthodox faction's grand banquet, all the Orthodox martial artists were gathering at the Kaifeng house. Hemi replied to him again with a sneer that it was exactly like that. Zhu smiled and said that he didn't know that the Mirima world was so violently divided into different factions, since he is a layman in regards to Murim. Hekrian replied that he had noticed that, and he hoped that Zhu was interested in learning about the world of Murim. And suddenly Hekrian approached the lad and said that Murim is a cruel place, especially now that the root of the conflict is getting deeper and deeper. Zhu didn't understand which root he was talking about. Then Hekrian asked him if he didn't know about the Orthodox way and the demonic way. Zhu replied that he had heard about it. Hekrian said that even in the history of Murim, the 2 forces have never been as clearly separated as they are today. They are in a situation where every person in Murim has to choose between 2 options no matter what. Zhu asked, there must be someone who doesn't want to belong to either the Orthodox path or the demonic path? Hekrian replied that there are such. However, people or groups that sit senselessly in the middle are considered enemies and are likely to be killed. At this moment, Zhu thought that this was some unreasonable measure. killing just because a person was unwilling to take sides. And Zhu asked Hikran, who takes the responsibility to press charges against those who could not make up their minds? Hikran replied that the orthodox faction, i.e. them, is taking it over. And suddenly he continued, he too belongs to the orthodox faction. But he doesn't think that his faction suppressing the demonic path is the only way to preserve the morality of the Murim. Shu was surprised. The demon in this said that this guy is quite open-minded for a young kid from the orthodox faction. He even speaks his mind. Hemi quickly moved closer to her brother, and said that he shouldn't talk like that in front of so many people. Zhu realized that he might be a hopeful young man from the Five Clans League. But right now, his opinion had no influence. He's right, but it's unrealistic. However, Zhu decided that it was still worth it to observe this person closely. Afterwards, the guy thanked the guys for the information, as he now knows that the situation in Murima is very complicated. Hemi replied that everyone's circumstances are different. Hekrian noticed Zhu's interest in the Murim, so he allowed him to ask more questions that he was interested in. Zhu smiled and said that it might sound rather presumptuous, but who was the strongest in Jianghu right now? The guys were surprised by such a question. But Hekrian said that he wasn't sure, despite some differences of opinion. The leading people among the 4 generations should be the grandmasters of the demonic path. The demon had never heard of such grandmasters. Zhu thanked for the answer. Hekrian also revealed that Jianghu is huge, and there are many undiscovered high-level martial artists. And so he really thinks that there are martial artists stronger than the ones he mentioned, and they could appear whenever and wherever they wanted. Suddenly Zhu asked, what about Patriarch Huining, the 6th ancestor of Shaolin? Hekrian began to laugh and said that it was hard to answer that since the Patriarch had lived 700 years ago. The demon started laughing loudly and told the Patriarch that the ancestors didn't like him very much. The Patriarch tried to calm himself down and not react to the demon. And then Zhu asked, then what about the heavenly demon? Hekrian and Hemi didn't understand why the guy was asking this. Hekrian replied that this is one of the characters from Murim history, and the story of the sky demon is simply not believable, so you shouldn't rely on it. The demon was seized with rage and began to shout that even the old men outside the heavens knew of this fact. Suddenly there was some shouting. Shu turned around and saw a crowd of men throwing the girl to the ground and shouting that how dare she think she could escape from them. The girl begged to be spared. Shu meanwhile evaluated their appearance, and realized that it was the Northern Blade Association. The girl was addressed by the vice-captain of the Northern Blade Association Law Enforcement Squad, White Tiger Sword Jie Duxum. Jie took the girl by the hair and started saying that she was a brave girl since she left her father and ran, saying she wanted to survive on her own. The girl called out for help. Suddenly, Hemi ran up, drawing her sword. She asked Jie, since when did Kaifeng become so lawless? Hemi began to shout that she didn't understand how martial artists from orthodox sects could oppress such a helpless little girl. The other visitors supported Hemi and also started shouting that even if they were from the Northern Blade Association, it had gone too far. Jie at this time told the girl that to think she dared to stick her nose into the affairs of the Northern Blade Association, and she definitely wouldn't be safe after this. Hemi got angry and started yelling that they could scare someone else with the name of the Northern Blade Association, but it would never work on her. Everyone was surprised that Hemi was from the Namgung family, which meant she was the daughter of the Azure Sky Divine Sword. And then Jie addressed her as a lady and asked her not to interfere in the affairs of other sects, for that was the unwritten rule of Jianghu. Hemi replied that she was not stupid enough not to know that. However, one should not turn a blind eye to what goes against public order. And that's what Hemi should be doing as a martial artist, because from what she's seen, what these people are doing is no different than kidnapping. Jie replied that he thinks Hemi is doing this because he doesn't realize that this girl Shui is the daughter of a snow tiger with 1,000 skills. Her father is the leader of Kaifeng's demonic border sect. Therefore, Jie explained that they had no choice as an order had been issued to arrest all the members of the demonic frontier sect. And if Hemi still won't get out of the way, they'll have to use physical force. Suddenly, Hekrian started laughing loudly and asked, since when did the Northern Blade Association Law Enforcement Squad behave so brazenly? Zhu, meanwhile, was watching from the sidelines and thought that he shouldn't have joined these guys. Jie replied to Hekrian that since they were on duty, they should not be threatened. He noticed that Hekrian was also from Namgun. Hekron responded that he did not intend to threaten, and asked what would have happened if he had threatened. Jie said that in that case, they have no choice but to report it to their superiors. Suddenly someone came in and said there was no need to report the case. It was the captain of the Northern Blade Association Law Enforcement Squad, the smiling eliminating sword, Wu Haianchen. Wu said that the word retreat does not exist in the vocabulary of their law enforcement unit, and asked Jie if he was going to report something so insignificant. Zhu meanwhile was watching from the sidelines. The demon began to say that this Wu was some kind of idiot who looked like chopsticks. Wu turned to Hecrian and asked if he thought he was out of line, and he also added that if the leader of the 5 Clans Alliance found out about it, Hecrian would be brought to justice. Also, Hecrian would be in a predicament if the story about the next head of the Great Namgun clan clashing with the Northern Blade Association over some demon path girl. Hecrian could barely contain himself. Wu continued to say that if the relationship between the Northern Blade Association and the 5 Clans League deteriorated because of Hecrian, would he take responsibility? At this point, Ping had already lost his temper and started shouting that Wu was an idiot, and how dare he threaten the head of the Namgun clan. The guy ordered for Wu to shut his mouth. Wu was surprised at such audacity, and told Peng that given his age and status, Peng had no right to say such a thing. After that, Wu told his men to order the members of the law enforcement squad surrounding the place not to let anyone out from now on. And now Wu asked Hecrian what he was going to do now. The demon, meanwhile, was filled with anger. He cried out that from the beginning, the scum of the orthodox sects have always been wolves in sheep's clothing. The demon suggested that Zhu should knock the idiot out. The guy replied that the demon was crazy because if he used demonic martial arts, his identity would be revealed. The demon kept saying that Zhu could just beat everyone to death so that there would be no witnesses left. The guy didn't like that idea. Suddenly, the patriarch said that in that case, you could use his martial arts. Zhu thought for a moment. At this time, Hecrian demanded that this girl be left to them and they would accompany her and monitor the investigation. The guy also shouted that it didn't matter if this girl's father was a representative of the demonic path or an enemy of the world, it had nothing to do with her. Suddenly, Wu started laughing loudly. Jie noticed that the expression on the captain's face had changed, the expression he shows when he wants to kill. Wu told Hecrian that they carry the halo of the clan on their backs, yet they don't know how the world works at all. So he suggested that they try to take the girl. Everyone drew their swords, and Wu said he couldn't bear to look at the arrogant face of a young master from a rich house, so he decided to kill this girl right now. Hecrian started shouting that this was not the right thing to do as a member of an orthodox sect. Suddenly, Wu stopped and said that really killing her would be too much, so he cut her clothes. Hemi started yelling that Wu was a real animal. Zhu couldn't take it anymore. He used an attack, knocking Wu to the floor. Hemi asked her brother what was going on. Hecrian couldn't believe his eyes. He realized that this was a stepping stone to ascend to heaven. Shaolin martial arts. Wu barely got to his feet and began to shout, "How dare this freak allow himself to do such a thing?" The people around him couldn't believe their eyes that this guy was literally floating in the air. Wu didn't realize that such a qigong still existed. He didn't understand where this scumbag came from, as he was clearly not a member of the 5 Clans League. Meanwhile, Zhu has ordered that Wu let the girl go, and if he doesn't, he will meet his death today. The demon was jubilant that Zhu would still finish someone off today, but the patriarch clearly didn't like that idea. Wu replied that he didn't know who the guy was and asked why and what he was doing it for. Wu threatened that he was the representative of the Northern Blade Association. And after that, Zhu threw a punch at him. The guy said that he had heard many times that this dog was from the Northern Blade Association, and told Wu to stop using it. Wu replied that he couldn't do that. And even if Zhu is a martial arts master, the word retreat does not exist in the words of the unit. Wu attacked the guy. However, the attempt failed. Zhu threw a few punches and warned that next time he would hit for real. Wu became furious and started yelling for the law enforcement squad to kill this scumbag immediately. The squad pounced on the guy. However, Zhu eliminated one by one. He didn't understand why these guys continued to act without relying on anything but numbers. The warriors from the squad attacked from different directions. Zhu used the bamboo leaf fist, then the heavenly palm, and then the Bodhisattva palm. Wu realized that all the techniques this guy was using were supreme Shaolin techniques. Wu gathered his strength and decided to strike when suddenly Zhu used Vajra's energy palm. Hecrian watched it all from the side and couldn't believe his eyes. He realized that this was undoubtedly a supreme indestructible palm. Hecrian didn't realize if this guy was really a martial arts master who had studied all 72 of Shaolin's supreme techniques. Zhu eliminated all the warriors from the squad. Meanwhile, Hemi helped the girl say. Zhu approached Wu and told him to listen carefully, as he would only say it once. The guy told Wu to order all the members of the law enforcement squad to retreat immediately, and if Wu refused, Zhu would make him experience pain unlike anything Wu had ever experienced. Wu nodded in agreement, and now the only problem left is, did the guy go overboard with his martial arts? What's the excuse now? Zhu couldn't think of anything and said that it seemed like they should leave it alone and start cleaning up the place right now. The sky was clear. And after the cleaning was finished inside the neutrality pavilion. Although it was awkward, all these awkward young people were sitting at the same table. Zhu suggested that we all sit down together to eliminate any tension. Wu was filled with anger, and then Ping couldn't stand it, and said that there should be a limit to how much Zhu looks down on them. The guy asked how dare Zhu laugh after making them look like complete fools. Hemi supported Pan and said that Zhu's jokes went too far as he pretended to be an amateur, but the amount of internal energy he had was incredible. And only Ian remained silent, thinking about how awesome this guy was during the battle. Meanwhile, Zhu brought his changes and said that due to unavoidable circumstances, he had no other option but to lie about his identity. The guy also added that he hopes the guys won't take offense at him. However, it is true that he is an amateur when it comes to Murim, since this was the first time Zhu had come to Murim. He told the boys that he hoped they would find it in their hearts to forgive him for deceiving them. Suddenly, Hecrian started laughing and said that he didn't want to get attached to what was in the past and ruin new acquaintances. However, Hecrian also said that it would be better if Zhu told them about his unavoidable circumstances so that everyone would feel less deceived. So the guy asked what Zhu's true identity was. And then Zhu replied that, frankly, it was not something he could be reckless about. But he also said that he understood what young Master Namgun was talking about. Fate had brought them all together like this. So Zhu decided not to hide it from them. Zhu began to tell me that he had inherited the mantras of Venerable Huining, the sixth patriarch of Shaolin Temple. The demon at that time told the boy that he was good at lying at every turn. Patarak said that there was some truth in what he said. Hemi started screaming that it was impossible, and she just couldn't believe this nonsense. The girl explained that the great Huining was a man of the Tang dynasty period, and it was impossible to inherit his mantra. Pan supported the girl, since becoming immortal is complete nonsense. The demon, meanwhile, told the guy that his lies weren't working. Zhu then said that he realized that his explanation was not clear enough. He explained that he had not met the patriarch in person. Zhu began to tell me that he was born and raised on Mount Tai. And one day, in an abandoned cave, he found traces of the patriarch's writing, and after that, he went to the cave every day. Although it was not easy to understand the texts, but many years later, despite some shortcomings, the guy was able to realize his legacy. Hemi only had to believe the story, since she had personally seen him do it. Hecrian believed it too, and told the fellow that he had indeed become the possessor of an incredibly fortunate acquaintance. Zhu said that in any case, he would really appreciate it if the guys would forgive him for unwittingly deceiving them. Hekrun replied that there was no need for any apology, as his appearance was a real blessing for Orthodox sects, and they're the ones who should be more careful about how they treat Zhu from now on. The boy didn't understand what kind of caution Hecrian was talking about. Then Hecrian explained that one of the most important things in Murim is seniority. They cannot treat Zhu carelessly, since he is someone who has a Shaolin divine being as his teacher. Everyone at the table supported Hecrian's words. The guys raised their glasses to such a pleasant acquaintance. Wu was the only one who didn't understand why he was drinking with these bastards. Suddenly, Zhu told Wu to calm down and not to get upset at the table, and also added that he could clean up if he wanted to spoil the mood. However, Zhu immediately reminded what would happen if Wu carelessly voiced his opinion. Wu was surprised that Zhu was using a yin-yang cultivation technique that separated thoughts and actions, and to think that he could perform such a technique so easily. Suddenly, Zhu turned to Wu in front of everyone and asked him if there would be any other mishaps after this. Wu, of course, assured everyone that nothing like that would happen. Zhu then said that he could go heal his injuries. Wu thanked him for caring so much. The boys began to disperse as well. Hecrian realized that Zhu couldn't find a place to sleep. Therefore, Hecrian said that since they had already left their equipment at a nearby inn, Zhu could stay with them. Finally, Zhu was alone with himself, and was able to take a bath. The guy tried to live peacefully, but the surrounding world was not set in his favor. The demon calmed the guy down and said that this is the life of the strong. The boy said that this time he owed a lot to the patriarch. Zhu was enjoying his bath. Suddenly, someone addressed him as Heaven Breaker and told him to come to his senses. Suddenly, Gump appeared in front of the boy. Zhu didn't expect to see this person in this place at all. Zhu presto looked at him and recognized the man. He immediately remembered him as having met him before and shouted that he was too hairy and ran away. Zhu immediately recalled in his mind that this was the same uncle he had met back then on the snowy mountain. But who suspected, thought the lad, that it would stick like a bath sheet and follow him even here. Gump didn't stay silent for long and crossed his arms and asked the great warrior to accept him. Zhu grabbed his head at the sound of his voice and replied that his ears were about to bleed. And he had come all the way here for that. Gump replied that his body had died once before, and the great warrior had saved him, so he wanted to dedicate his life to him. Zhu replied that it was a hopeless case. The demon immediately prostrated himself in front of the guy and asked him, "What's the big deal?" Let him imagine that he was about to have a subordinate. Zhu thought for a moment that he might have an assistant. But if he took him with him, that clumsy, bulky man would attract too much attention. But in a moment to the guy, something came to mind and he showed with his face that he already agreed and answered Gunpa that he would be his subordinate. At this time on Mount Taishan in the small mystic peak where there is much snow, Wano and his brother were laboring and hauling firewood. But in a moment they both stopped and Wano listened and asked what was that sound. When they looked back they saw some stranger with goods on his back running downstairs screaming. Wanak asked, "Who is this man?" It was Gump. He saw the old boys through his sweat and said he'd finally found it. But he remembered Zhu's words that there were exceptions. After all, with his current skill level, he would be a burden to him. And so right now he should go wherever the guy tells him to go and let him start practicing hard. Gumpa didn't understand anything and asked, "Where is that going?" He stood in front of the old men and introduced himself, saying that he was the blue-faced demon king, and by his master's order, he came to Taishan to visit them, the masters. Wano was surprised and asked Gump what he was talking about. After all, according to his memories, no one should know about this place. So where did such a bear come from? Huino thought for a while and pondered, what was the young master going to do with him? At this time, Zhu was practicing and his spirit-named patriarch told him to concentrate on the flow of energy. After all, it's like a wave, a guy has to follow it, not go against it. Zhu tried very hard and was at a high level. But suddenly the patriarch told the guy to stop. And he began to praise him, because now he had much better control over his inner energy. The demon did not remain silent either and asked the patriarch what was the point of doing such basic things. The patriarch replied that practicing basic things is also important. The demon asked Zhu if he had made plans for the future. The demon asked Zhu if he had made any plans for the future. The demon laughed and said that he wanted to teach the kid his martial arts, but his body was still too frail, and since he hadn't made up his mind about his plans, let him do it. Zhu laughed and told him to stop talking nonsense. The demon got angry after saying that and asked the guy if he was crazy. Zhu replied that even if he didn't have any plans yet, he would decide what he wanted to do. He doesn't want to give up again. The demon told the boy that he could already forget all his ambitions. But if he doesn't give up anything, he'll live like garbage. The patriarch, too, could not remain silent for long and said that on the other hand, even events that seem to happen in disorder actually happen in accordance with the natural order of the world. So there is no need to waste his life on obsession and vanity. Such is the design of the universe that put him on this path. Zhu thought at this moment that the earth had given him a chatty asshole and a decrepit saint as his assistant. The guy got angry and told them to stop and finally shut up. After all, as it was, he would decide for himself how to live his life. Plus, apparently only the parts of their martial arts memories have been passed down to him. Then where are the rest of his memories? And it's like they were hidden on purpose. So what can he do to recover them? The demon replied that it should return by itself, when its internal energy and strength grow. And when he would become at least 10 times stronger, that's when they would just get their half form and the guy could do all sorts of tricks. Shu was surprised and asked, "Tricks?" The demon replied that if the guy got under the influence of the ghost law technique earlier, for a while they could act together with him, but in a state of full form, they could become free. And then the demon thought he could take control of the boy's body. Shu was surprised and asked the spirits, "Will they be able to free themselves?" The demon laughed and replied that they could go anywhere, either to the underworld or maybe to another body. Shu at a later time started having dreams in which he was addressing his grandfather and asking that he couldn't recognize him. The kid was telling his grandfather that it had gotten so hard after he left them. But the thing that bothered him the most. And then he cried in the moment. Grandpa cupped his face with both hands and told Zhu not to be sad. And he is no longer alone, does he remember? And now he has his own way. That is why he must not hurt the world the way the world has hurt him. After all, the boy is not a demon out for revenge. Shu has always been a strong man he is proud of. The grandfather told the boy to remember these words forever. Shu saw his grandfather evaporating and shouted for him not to leave him. Shu went straight through these memories that he felt like he was reliving everything. The demon turned to him and told him to wake up. Shu opened his eyes and couldn't breathe for fear. The demon asked him if he was all right. The patriarch was also curious and asked the boy what dream had caused him so much suffering. Shu didn't dare to share this memory with them, and replied that it was nothing special. And thanks to the demon, he had passed. The demon told the guy to save those words for later. Shu was surprised and asked what was wrong. The demon replied that right now, someone was trying to get into this room. Shu looked around and saw that the door was ajar. The boy saw the red robe and was ready to attack. In a moment, the doors swung open and Zhu asked who had come so late. Zhu thought that it might be an assassin sent by the server blades. Just when Gunt went to Taishan Mountain, the demon said, judging by the gate, it was a woman. In a moment, the doors opened in front of him, and Ian appeared. Zhu immediately jumped up from the bed warily asking, "What business did she come here on?" Ian replied to the guy that from the very first moment she saw him, she felt they were destined to be together, and she thought she was going to lose him if she didn't have the courage. Shu was wondering what she was doing. The demon started laughing and asked, "Is that bad?" The patriarch was the kindest of them all, and kept saying that it was wrong. Ian slowly approached the guy and said he was so handsome and charming. Ian was ready for anything at that moment. But Shu thought it was very strange and grabbed her face with his hands. Shu told the girl that she might get in trouble for this, so let her head back to her place. The guy squeezed her face so tightly with his hands that Ian asked him to let go. Shu realized he had overreacted and apologized to her. Ian asked the young master why he was rejecting her. Did he not like her? Shu replied that that's not the case. And he's a newcomer who only recently got into Murim. And he's just not worthy of it, but he is very grateful for her feelings. Ian realized that it's not that simple and said that Shu has great goals and she should go to her place. The guy heard her words and thanked the girl for understanding. Ian didn't end there and said that even though she backed off today, she didn't give up her feelings for him. Shu laughed, and before he could ask her, Ian ran away and slammed the door behind her. The demon asked the guy, hadn't he heard that heroes have heroic lust too? The patriarch jumped into the conversation and said there was no such thing. And Shu was very good for holding back. Shu sighed with fatigue and said loudly, "Not a moment without some incident." The demon was surprised to see the guy stand up and asked, after blowing her off, would he really go to her room? Shu looked at him angrily and replied not to talk nonsense, and called him a lecher. He wants to go out for some fresh air to clear his head. Shu didn't stand still and decided to fly for a while. The demon said that the guy was very good at the heavenly demon's flying technique. But where was he going in such a hurry? It was good to be alone, but wasn't he going to bed? Shu replied that the elders from the small mystic peak had told him something. And when he saw his grandfather in his dream, he remembered that he wanted to meet someone. Patriarch decided to say something when suddenly Zhu interrupted him, and said that he was just out for a walk. Shu descended to the ground and said that it was indeed majestic. He arrived at the emperor's tomb. The demon asked the guy if he had really decided to honor the memory. Zhu ran to the tomb and replied that he was not. As the two elders said, this is the headquarters of the vagabond group. In turn, vagabonds have the number of knots on their belt to signify who they are. And this guy has 2 knots, which means he's some kind of scout, and what the 2 old men told him was helpful. The wanderer asked Zhu who he was and what he wanted here. Zhu introduced himself with a laugh and replied that he had come here to see Pun Chongho, the head of the vagabond group. The wanderers moved away from the guy and asked, was it really him, Heavenly Jade Dragon Great Warrior Zhu? Zhu laughed upon hearing about the Heavenly Jade Dragon and replied that he didn't even know when he got such a nickname. But he is really a guy named Zhu. The wanderer asked the guy, wasn't he the one who picked a fight with the Northern Blade Association yesterday? Zhu replied that was correct, and he remembered, as the elders had told him, that vagabonds have eyes and ears all over the Murim. There is nothing they do not know. The vagabonds told Zhu to follow them and they would escort him inside. Just then they arrived at the reception hall. The stranger said hello to Zhu and apologized for them greeting him so rudely. Zhu saw that this guy had 3 knots, which meant that he was a capable person. Zhu greeted in return and replied that it was no big deal. The guy asked what Zhu needed from their leader. Zhu didn't talk for long and took out a token and told the guy to show it to him. Then he would understand why they had come to him. The guy, seeing the item, was greatly surprised and told Zhu to wait for a while and he would give the leader the token. Zhu remembered something and stopped the guy. He was asked how else could he help. Zhu replied that the guy fulfills his requests without even asking anything. The guy replied that they were vagabonds, and the Northern Blade Association had long been feuding with each other. They were pleased to hear Zhu humiliate them, but he doesn't know what the young master has in common with their leader. But they are also curious about the goals Zhu is going for, so don't let Zhu think he owes them a debt. The guy immediately ran away and said he would be back soon. Zhu considered and saw that although the decoration here was not rich, the headquarters was arranged very well. Despite their appearance, the group of vagabonds could not be underestimated, and you shouldn't look down on them and think of them as some kind of scum. And Zhu understood that very well. In a moment, the veti opened in front of him, and the dust rose so high that the man's silhouette was barely visible. Zhu was very much surprised and didn't understand what was going on. The leader of the vagabonds asked the young master, was he the one who brought this token here? Zhu examined the leader fully and saw that he had a lot of knots. The leader asked him, was he the one who brought the token? Zhu replied with a trembling voice that it was correct. The leader fell on his knees and said that he was Pun Chongho, saluting the great emperor. And he is honored to do so. Pun asked the guy to forgive his servant's infidelity. Zhu was surprised and didn't understand what was going on. Pun said that henceforth he would be willing to sacrifice his life to serve him, His Majesty. Zhu realized that this was indeed the case. Huino had told him that he would meet the leader of the vagabonds at the imperial tomb, and he would have to use the imperial token again. He immediately remembered his dream, how his grandfather had told him repeatedly that he was no longer alone. Zhu realized that his grandfather had really directed him to his tomb. Pun asked how Huang No and Huino were doing. Zhu replied that he couldn't tell him exactly, as he hadn't seen them for quite some time. Pun told His Majesty that he could speak to him in an informal tone. Zhu replied no, for he was more comfortable as it was, especially since he is no longer the emperor, so there is no need to address him like that. Pun replied that the servant would follow his instructions. Pun told Zhu that although he is brothers, they are the only ones in the Murim who know of who Zhu is. At his one command, they will gather the best warriors to take back his throne. Zhu laughed and replied to Master Pun that he was no longer interested in this. Now his uncle, the hero of this era, he doesn't want to start a feud. So they will close the topic. Pun calmed down and asked Zhu what his future plans were. Zhu replied that although he had given up the throne, he didn't want to be a poor man either. How about becoming the emperor of Murim? With Pun's army and the support of the brothers, but few sects will be able to fight back. We can subjugate the strongest Murim organizations first. How can they do that? Does Master Pun wish to organize a bloody revolt for him? Pun asked Zhu, does he wish to organize a revolt? Guy replied that that was exactly what it was. Pun said that the vagabonds had nothing to do with the alliance of the 9 orthodox sections. Let you guess why. Zhu thought for a moment, and replied that he didn't even know. Poon said it was to keep his independence. Despite the fact that groups of vagabonds are scattered everywhere, he has cost a lot of effort and patience to unite all of them so that now at one of his orders anyone will be ready to rush into battle. However, it's all for a heavenly order that will come someday. They will do whatever he says, no matter what. Shu thought that just as he thought, his grandfather had really loyal servants. He might have taken it as a rude request from the youngster, but the head agreed to it as well, and he's learning more and more how great his grandfather was. Shu apologized to Master Poon and said it was a joke. Poon was frightened and asked the Buddha if he had insulted him out of his own ignorance. Shu laughed and replied that all was well. But his words did give him confidence. If he needed help in the future, would Poon honor his request? Poon bowed and replied that he had no hesitation. Poon remembered and told the young master that his name had already spread all over Kaifeng. He had heard that the master used the fighting techniques of the Shaolin monks. But how did he learn them? Shu replied that it was long to explain, but later it was gladly done by the No brothers. He asked Poon if they attended the banquet for the orthodox factions. Poon replied that his students would be there. But if the young master went, he would drop by too. Shu immediately stood up and said that meant they would see each other there. Poon didn't waste any time and asked the young master to wait for a moment. Poon headed toward the wall and pressed the secret stone that opened the secret room. Poon asked the boy to head after him. After all, he had something to show him. Upon entering the relic room, Shu was greatly surprised and said it was an incredible place. Demon was also shocked and said that the vagrants had collected an arsenal here. Poon said that just the sight of these blades made his heart skip a beat. These are all famous weapons from the Han dynasty. Shu replied that it was indeed delightful. But how long would they have to walk like this? Poon opened the next door and replied that they had arrived. Shu saw a very bright light and was greatly surprised. 2 golden blades appeared in front of him. Poon said that he kept the weapon that the past emperor received, and he thinks it's time for the sword to return to its rightful owner. The demon was yelling at the guy to just look at it. Shu turned around and thought, why was he so surprised? He got a strange feeling from these swords, though. And then Poon asked the young master what kind of sword he wanted. Let him take whatever he liked. Shu made a thinking face and stared intently at the weapons. The demon shouted to him at this time to Brother Dark. The patriarch at this time was telling the young master to take the white sword that was standing next to him. Shu asked Master Poon if he could take 2 at once. He realized that he was facing a very difficult choice, and it was better to ask first. Poon laughed and replied, why not? After all, the 2 swords belonged to him anyway. So let him take both of them. The demon spirit said that he was a greedy little man. The patriarch in turn replied that 1 would be enough. Shu told them to stop muttering. He asked Master Poon if he knew anything about where these swords came from. Poon replied that of course he was aware of it. The black sword is called the Heavenly Demon Sword and the white sword, the Spirit's Sword. Shu asked Demon, did he beg to take it because it was his? Demon called the guy a dog and asked if there was a problem. Shu said that in addition to this blade, there is also a white blade. Poon replied that it was a spirit sword. It is said to have been forged by a famous master of the period of the battling kingdoms, and as far as he knows, it is also called the Emperor's Sword. Shu was on his way to his home and had his hand on the Emperor's Sword. He immediately arrived at the Neutral Hotel, where a large number of people had gathered in front of it. Hecrian was discussing something with his partner, as he suddenly saw Shu and directed his gaze at him. Hecrian asked the young master where he had disappeared to. Shu replied that he was just bored, so he decided to take a walk. Hecrian was greatly surprised, for he saw the 2 blades that shone on Shu's belt. Hecrian asked the young master, what is this? Hemi stood in front of her brother and asked too, how could he get 2 swords in one night? Shu laughed and replied that it came out by accident. Generally speaking, there was nothing remarkable about them. Hemi immediately thought about Shu's words, about nothing remarkable. And the blades seemed worthwhile. Pan turned to Hikran and said they had to be there in time for the banquet to start. It's time to move out. Hecrian asked the young master if he would go with them. It was said that this year's banquet would be attended by a Qigong master from Shaolin. But on the way to Yunqing, Hecrian said that he was still surprised. Shu had already earned himself the nickname of the Heavenly Jade Dragon, and his name is all over the neighborhood. He thinks he'll get all the attention at the banquet. Zhu replied that Hecrian was giving such high praise to an amateur like him, he was even embarrassed. Ian looked at him with loving eyes and said that he wasn't an amateur at all. He realized that this was going to be a problem for him. Zhu thanked her and said that whatever it was, he was honored. This building is beautifully visible from afar. The Northern Blades Association. It is easy to understand from the name that it is located in the north of the country. The Northern Blades are quite different from the alliance of the Southern Blades, the 5 Clans League, and the alliance of the 9 Orthodox sects. And what's more, the Northmen have the largest number of level 4 warriors. They are ruled by 3 elders, and under their patronage so are defense swordsmen, magic swordsmen, blood swordsmen, and demon swordsmen. Lower down the hierarchy are generals, captains, and common soldiers. Captains lead ironclad units. The generals, on the other hand, command the Law Squad, the Lucha Squad, and the Loyalty Squad. The number of all warriors exceeds 5,000. Not counting the rogues, it could be said to be the strongest organization. Hecrian said that although the association is acting quite aggressively right now, the demonic and blood swordsmen are the most worrisome. Zhu heard these words and said that the names are so bad that they speak for themselves. Hecrian replied that this was correct. These men were originally assassins and brigands, but after much negotiation, the Northern Blades managed to recruit them. However, even after the criminals became part of the association, they did not change. Therefore, their 5 Clans League and the Young Blade Association had many questions for the Northerners. However, each time, the Northern Blades Association evaded the answer, and this was the main reason for the enmity between the League and the Northern Blades. Zhu said, so the Blood and Demon Swordsmen are members of the Northern Blades Association. It seems illogical. The pavilion is huge, it must have cost a tidy sum to build. Jung also said that there were rumors that it took 100,000 gold, but that was already obvious. Zhu asked with a smirk on his face, 100,000? Where do they get that much? Hecrian replied that the Northerners' income came from the transportation of goods. But on top of that, they own an inn, training pavilions, and make money through battles and all that. Hecrian immediately glanced over and told Zhu in confidence that they used to still make money with magic as well, but now the lack of income from it was surely made up for by the swordsman's brigandage. Zhu said that it is true that if you monopolize this industry, you can make a lot of money in it. In the moment, someone quickly galloped down the road and behind the guys yelling at them to move away immediately. The guys were surprised and such a scream made some of them bleed from their ears. Hecrian said that judging by the loud sound he realized who it was. Hemi asked, what do these people want? Zhu immediately stepped in front of the guys and Hecrian was startled. Zhu immediately like a confident warrior stood in front of this stranger. Ian shouted to the young master that it was too dangerous. The demon asked the guy, does he wish to die under the hooves of the horse? Zhu got angry and told him to be quiet. He was also tired of such recklessness. The horse wouldn't stop in front of him, and headed for Zhu. But the boy stood to the last. The guys were all terrified and shouted to the young master that he would be killed. But the horse was so strong that it jumped over Zhu. Zhu was greatly surprised and angry, and asked, what kind of horse is this? It's unbelievable. Hemi began to mock him and say that the young master wanted to show off, but it didn't work out for him. While Ian was worried and asked if he was alright, Demon didn't stay away either and asked if he realized what happens to Ponterices. Zhu replied that it's just that this guy is a good rider. You can't even find the likes of him in the Imperial Army. Strange to find such a pro in an area where horseback riding is unpopular. Except, in his opinion, the rider girl. Zhu asked the guy, are all these people going where they are going? Hecrian replied that it seems like they are. Hemi also joined the conversation and asked who was inviting so many people. They'll die here in line. Hecrian told his sister that one should be able to wait. Zhu was surprised and turned to Master Namgung and said that it wasn't necessary. Hecrian was surprised and asked what? Zhu saw someone and turned to Wu's brother. Wu turned around in a moment, and was surprised that someone was yelling to him. Wu immediately wondered, how did this kid end up here? Zhu was thinking at the same time, why was he standing there? Wu ran up to the guy and greeted him and said that he should have approached him faster. He saw that Zhu had come here with these guys from the 5 Clans League. Zhu asked Wu Hyun, he can use his connections, right? They've been in line for a long time, and it doesn't seem like it's going to end. Wu immediately sensed Zhu's strength, and replied that he would have no problem doing so. In honor of their acquaintance, let them follow him. Shu laughed, and said out of embarrassment that they were giving him so much trouble. Wu was very angry, but replied that it was not so. Wu, in a matter of 5 minutes, led them to the free-flow pavilion. He said they could set up here for the time being. The stranger adoringly looked at Shu from the window, and said that that guy looked like an ordinary youngster who still had milk on his lips. Wu said that Wu Hyun-young and the law enforcement team must be out of their minds. He can't believe they could be humiliated by a child like that. But then a man came in and asked, "Is he the one called the Heavenly Jade Dragon?" Wu was surprised to hear the association leader's voice and asked, "How did he come here?" The leader replied that this was a brave guy. After what he had done, still came here quietly. Half of the law enforcement group was injured back then, and they paid for all the destruction too. And it seems they also missed the daughter of the demon sect leader Kaifeng, and the Sky Destroyer had already done too much damage to them. Because of him, the people in Murim looked down on the Northern Blade Association. The leader proudly said they couldn't let it go unanswered. Let them deliver it without too much fuss. He answered for dishonoring the Northern Blades. After a couple minutes, the ceremony started and the guys were already watching the performance intently. Shu saw a huge crowd. Are they all adherents of the orthodox path? A guy came into the center of the arena and started saying that the association was holding this meeting because there were important issues. It was Seo Chong AK, the three-eyed heavenly thunder, the military advisor of the Northern Blade Association. Seo said that the first is to destroy the forces that threaten them. The second was to recruit young talented warriors to accomplish this goal. On behalf of the Northern Blades, he proposes to be the first to strike at the demonic sect before they grow stronger and start threatening the peace of the Murim again. When the warriors heard this instruction, they began to cheer. Shu realized that the orthodoxy wanted to eradicate the demonic sects completely. Did they gather so many people from different sects of their own direction for the sake of it? Shu asked, "What kind of person is this?" Hekrian replied that he was the military advisor of the Northern Blade Association. Shu was surprised and asked if it was too playful. Hekran replied that there is some. However, no one would be able to oppose such a statement. Surely the Blades must have already enlisted the support of some sects, and in such a case, this presentation is only a formality. If there are unresolved questions, it is only in how the main orthodox sects will behave. Seo turned to the Murim warriors and asked them to think hard about the proposal. The warriors didn't think for long and shouted jubilantly that the end of the demon's path. The demon laughed, and told Zhu that it felt like watching a well-rehearsed play. "Aren't these jubilant guys from the Northern Blade Association?" Demon asked. Zhu replied that they were. But then Seo saw an old man approaching him. This old man was one of the influential people of the association. Zhu straightforwardly noticed that the overall mood had changed drastically. But who was that old man in the suit? Hekrian replied that it was the Shaolin abbot. And his name is Tsugong. The demon told the patriarch that it was his colleague. The patriarch got excited and replied that he sees everything. Zi introduced himself, and said that he was from the Shaolin temple. Shu became very curious about this. Zi's opinion actually reflects the opinion of the orthodox sects. Zi said that he listened carefully to the military advisor's proposal. However, he disagreed with him about the military advisor's proposal. He does not deny that the Northern Blades Association's offer comes from their true allegiance to the Murim, but any action must be reasonable. There is no need to provoke the sects of the demonic path ourselves. There can only be peace in the Murim when there is a balance between the sects. Even in the darkest times when the heavenly demon ruled, there was a certain tolerance towards the adherents of the demonic path. Isn't that why there has been peace here for a long time? And Su also said that they responded in kind. So tell me, such wise warriors as everyone else would not commit a rash act, would they? And so he, as the abbot of the Shaolin, is protesting the proposal of the Northern Blade Association. Hekrian said it can't be. He can't believe that the abbot has publicly expressed his disagreement. The patriarch said that Shaolin is still strong. The demon also said that this old man knew not to provoke them. Shu asked the celestial demon, what did that mean? Was he running the Murim? Was he the leader or something? Was he the one in charge of everything? The demon smiled and said that the world couldn't forget him. How many followers did he have then? Let Shu just say the word and he'll introduce him to everyone. He's talking about the heavenly demon school. Shu told him that everyone who was in it had been dead a long time ago. The demon was surprised and asked, seriously? Hecrian said that he still thought that only their clan would express dissent. In that case, only the Young Blade Alliance remained. Zhu said that they say that the Southern Blade Alliance and the Northern Blade Association have strained relations. Unless he's confused. Hecrian replied that's right. Zhu said then if the union refuses, what will happen then? Hecrian replied that the clan leaders would meet to come to a common decision. The majority had already agreed, so in the end it was up to the Northern Blades. However, the fact that 3 of the 4 major sects have expressed their opposition will not go unnoticed. Just as Namgung Hecrian said, the 5 clans league disagreed. And Pyong Ho Wu, head of the Pyong clan from Hebei. The only thing left to hear is the opinion of the Young Blades Association. If they did not agree, even if the Northern Blades Association did decide to act, the attack would be baseless. And moreover, the association may lose its influence in the Murima because of this. Hence, the whole future of the event depends on the opinion of the Southern Blades. And we must focus. Zhu immediately saw that this sword man looked strong. Ku Rinjin, the elder of the Southern Blade Union, said, as for the Northern Blade's proposal, he is against it. Zhu was surprised and reacted to this. Seo approached Ku personally and said that they had agreed on something else, right? Ku replied that he knew. He went in front of everyone and asked them to understand him. And his disagreement is a personal opinion, but as for the union of the Southern Blades, he supports the idea. And then the warriors began to shout that the Northern and Southern Blades were in league. Ku asked Seo if he was satisfied. Seo was greatly surprised and realized that this Southerner could only be influenced by pressure. Shu asked, what does that even mean? He's personally against it, but the whole alliance approves of it. Hecrian replied that it was nonsense. He couldn't even imagine that the Southern Blade Alliance would agree to such a proposal. Hemi was saying at this point that while one laughs, the other cries. On the way home, Zhu asked Hecrian if this was really how it was going to end. An unusual ending, I must admit. Hecrian asked in surprise, unusual? Zhu replied, shouldn't the one they are feuding with refuse the offer to destroy entire sects? Why was it the other way around? Hecrian laughed, and replied that it's not that simple in Murim. Zhu must be disappointed now. The demon turned to Zhu and said that he is naive and agrees with this fellow escaped emperor. Doesn't he know the law of kill or be killed? Zhu replied that hearing this from him made him realize that he was wrong. The demon saw that after these words, the boy began to realize how the Murim worked. There are the strong and then there are the weak. The weak mostly die, and only the strongest survive. He'll teach the kid everything he knows himself, and make him the heir to the head of the celestial demon school. Emperor in exile. The patriarch asked the demon, is he having wicked thoughts again? Zhu asked the guy, what will happen now? Among the 4 major Murim organizations, opinions were split in half. Hecrian replied that right now it all depends on the results of the clan leaders' vote that will take place tonight. Zhu realized that this was when it would become clear whether the war with the demonic sects would start. But then Wu came up to them and asked which one of them was the heavenly jade dragon. Zhu turned around and replied that it was him and asked what was wrong. He immediately realized that it was that guy from the Northern Blade Association. Wu answered him that their leader wished to see him. Let him follow him. Peng asked, is that? It's impolite to not even give a reason. Wu replied that the opinions of people like them didn't matter, unlike his master's orders. Peng lost his temper and was on his way to attack, but Zhu stopped him and told him to calm down. Zhu replied, knowing that the clan leaders would soon gather to vote, it seems to be a matter of urgency, right? So if they sent for him so soon, he had no choice, and they would even use force in his case. One of the warriors asked the guy, did he think he was joking? Wu turned to Zhu as his young friend and said that this kind of chance is rare. He must be talking like this mindlessly without realizing it, right? Zhu replied, there was hardly anyone who didn't understand that. But then someone came up to them and apologized for interrupting them. He apologizes for barging into their conversation, but asks that they understand him. He can't get past it. Hecrian and the others were greatly surprised, and he realized that it was Superior Zigong himself. Tsu said he was in a hurry to get here as he has very little time because of the upcoming vote, and he had heard that there was a follower of his master's teacher here. Who is this illustrious disciple who is continuing Hyunjin's work? Wu asked Tsu, what is he talking about? Shu was surprised and asked, is his teacher's teacher saying abbot? Tsu replied that this was correct. It is said that his martial art comes straight from the great Huining. That makes him their spiritual mentor. Hecrian thought for a moment and asked, is that it? And why didn't he realize it right away? Master Huining is the founder of the Shaolin Temple, and his direct follower is no different from him, and thus Shu could hold the highest position in Shaolin. But then he said that if Shu only used Master Huining's name to gain his own fame, it would be considered an insult to Shaolin. And in that case, they wouldn't be able to turn a blind eye to it. Shu in a moment felt that there was too much pressure on him. The demon said that this grandpa wasn't kidding, right? The patriarch also replied that he didn't think he would be so pressured. Shu laughed and asked how he could prove it. He didn't restrain himself, and started to show his energy. Shu told Tsu that he wanted to demonstrate what he was capable of right here. Tsu smiled and replied that of course he welcomed his enthusiasm, but he has some business to attend to right now, so they should say goodbye for now. Can he be tested later at the temple itself? Shu bowed and replied that of course. Z bowed back and said that he would be waiting for him any time. Hecrian was surprised and realized that Shu would be able to take the highest position in the Shaolin. But who was this guy anyway? Hecrian had said on the way that Abbot Z had avoided conflict with the Northern Blade Association. But apparently the adepts were all furious about the incident at the guest house. Shu asked what they would do to him. Hecrian replied that he knew he had a strong warrior by his side, but don't underestimate the leader of the Northern Blades. And frankly, they started the conflict. Anyway, let Shu take care of himself. They're all worried about him. Shu replied with a smile that he understood and would be careful. And let them not worry too much. And so, on the way back, the destroyer of the heavens had a thought. But all those in power turned out to be honest and generous people. However, the extent of their evil directly depended on how one perceived them. Because of this, the Heaven Destroyer did not hate his uncle Yanwan, nor did he resent him. Because he was weak and didn't know how to fight, his uncle overthrew him. In a way, it was even according to the law of nature. If his uncle was a tyrant, he'd be overthrown himself. But Yanwan is not so stupid. When the young man was able to calmly think about what had happened, an understanding came to him. On the way, the stranger turned to Zhu and asked, was it him? It was the young Emperor Zhu, the destroyer of heaven, the heavenly jade dragon. He had 3 personalities in harmony, with none of them being particularly inclined to any of them. At the same time, there is no harmony in Murim. Everything is in the hands of the universe, which gave him this power. Zhu wondered if maybe he should follow a path where he could restore balance to the Murim. At midnight, Zhu reached the free flow pavilion and lay outside, looking intently at the sky. Zhu said he was very bored and wondered if the results of the vote were known. At the same second, someone ran beside him, and he was so fast that Zhu immediately sensed it. He stood up and saw someone moving quickly on the rooftops. Zhu said that it was a very complicated traveling technique. This is the heart of the Northern Blades Association. Who is this guy? And then Zhu decided he had to catch up with him. Zhu became very suspicious that this man only moves between the shadows. And he thinks he's at least stronger than Wu Hyun. At this time in the Divine Sword Pavilion, it towers at the very center of the Northern Blade Association's territory. The building has 9 floors. Only 2 people in the Murima had the title of Divine Sword. One of them was the current leader of the 5 Clans League. This is Namgung Wai, the Azure Sky Divine Sword. And the second owner of the Divine Sword Pavilion, the leader of the Northern Blade Association. This is the Fickle Divine Sword, Dakuhan Chan. He is the youngest of the leaders of the 4 major orthodox sects, but despite this, he is nicknamed the Emperor of Swords in Murima. And since oranges aren't born asps, his father, the previous leader of the association, the sleeping dragon Dakiyung, was also a strong warrior, but he suddenly disappeared after handing over the position of head to his son. But rumor has it that the sleeping dragon Dakiyung is somewhere far away training his grandson, the sword dragon Azure Rain, Dakumu. But no matter how things really are, Dakuhan Chong is now at the head of the Northern Blades. Zhu saw that a stranger had entered that building. It was the Burning Water Pavilion. And this is another pavilion. It looks quite beautiful. However, this backyard is guarded by dozens of men. All excellent warriors. Which means they're protecting whoever's inside. Or else, they are holding him in custody. And Shu became very curious as to who was inside this pavilion. But how can he do that? If he was caught, he could easily be mistaken for a thief. he asked Demon how he could sneak in undetected. Does he have techniques? The demon was surprised and asked what? He's using it right now, isn't he? Shu asked, is it a stealth technique of a heavenly demon? But will it help to hide from strong warriors? The demon addressed the guy as a boy and asked, what is he stirring his skills with mud right now? Just let him focus and maximize his energy. Shu started laughing and called him an angry cloud. He started demonstrating and thought that maximum stealth is achieved like this, and the young man did as the demon said and tried to sneak into the pavilion. Such a technique, with maximum concentration of internal energy, would help to pass the guards, if there was room to maneuver. Zhu made his way into the pavilion and saw that he had gotten past the warrior and wasn't noticed, and he seems to have made it through. And also, the technique to walk past any person, going unnoticed. Even a perfectly trained warrior couldn't feel anything but the flow of energy. The warrior at this moment thought, where did this wind come from? At this time, Shu entered the rooms of the pavilion. Zhu saw the guy he was chasing. He saw that he was looking for something. But then someone called out to him like Huang Sa. The stranger immediately fell to his knees and replied that he was listening to Madam. Shu was greatly surprised by such an event. The girl came out of the shower and asked how it went. She was so wet and beautiful that Zhu was ready to get lost. The girl turned to mistress and said that she was sorry to report but then the mistress interrupted her and told Huang Sa that she was not like herself. Why is she procrastinating? Let Huang tell her everything, and there's no need to hide anything. Huang replied that he was a disgusting, bloodthirsty, cowardly womanizer. Many people in the surrounding villages complain about him. Madam said, what does it mean that the junior leader of the Southern Blade Alliance is a scum like this? Huang asked Madam what she thought she would do now. Madam replied with a question, what can she do? This marriage of convenience for the sake of an alliance with the southern provinces. In fact, it's no different than if her father had just sold her. And it turns out her fiancé is a jerk. When Zhu heard all this, he thought, is she the daughter of the leader of the Northern Blade Association? So that's what this is all about. It makes sense now. The agreement between the Northern Blades and the Southern Blades was achieved through marriage. From what he'd heard, her fiancé was a piece of shit. Would the leader of the association give his daughter in marriage to such a man for ambition? A ruthless man. Huang told mistress that she would have refused if she were her. Mistress asked the girl, would she have helped her escape? Huang replied that she would have complied without a second thought. It was her duty to protect her. Of course, she would always be on her side, mistress thought and thanked Huang for such loyalty. And she could be free for the day. She needed to be alone. Mistress let go of Huang and in a moment sighed, and sitting down on a chair covered herself with her arms and began to cry. Shu was greatly surprised at this moment, and didn't understand what he should do next now. He understands how helpless she feels, because he has faced similar things himself, floating aimlessly downstream, and all he could do was shed tears. He tried to grasp the only chance he had, and his grandfather's friends saved him. He wondered if he could save her. The lady sobbed and suddenly said that she wished her older brother were here. Zhu decided to show her, and withdrew his invisible energy. Mistress was startled and surprised in the moment. The girl was startled and asked who he was. Zhu immediately used his technique, and the girl couldn't move her lips. Zhu got down on his knee and told the mistress that he had no reason to harm her. He is Heavenly Jade Dragon Zhu and was here by chance, trying to track down a strange man. And he had unwittingly heard the situation she was in, so he thought he could help her. He would lift the spell from her, just make her promise not to scream. The girl had been silent all this time, and Zhu remembered that she couldn't speak. Zhu immediately lifted the spell from her, and the girl without wasting a second immediately punched him in the face. But Shu was faster than her, and in a moment dodged the blow. She was surprised that he was so fast. Shu asked, should he hit her? The girl turned to him and asked if he realized what he was doing now. Zhu apologized and replied that he really wanted to help her. And her robe fell open a little. The guy saw that fortunately she didn't seem to be about to make a fuss. The girl shivered and asked how he could help her. Zhu replied that he didn't know and asked if there was anything she wanted. The girl told him that he was willing to do whatever she asked him to do. Zhu confidently replied that it was like that. Let her just say so, and he would fulfill her every request. The girl thought, what is this guy doing? Does he really want to help a stranger he's seeing for the first time in his life? Judging by the fact that this guy was able to sneak in here undetected, he's not some bandit. Can we trust him? The girl couldn't help herself and started laughing. Shu was greatly surprised and asked what was so funny. The girl replied that a minute ago she was hoping a life-saving straw would appear. She ended up getting a whole rope. It's kind of funny, Shu asked in surprise. Straw? Rope? The girl replied that it was necessary to test the rope for strength, right? Her name is Daka Solan. And now we can speak as acquaintances. If he gets her out of Northern Blade's territory, she'll owe him her life. Shu smiled and replied that he understood, and suggested to her that she put on some comfortable clothes. They are leaving right now. Solan said that no, it wouldn't work now. They will meet in exactly 24 hours. Shu thought it was strange and asked why. At this time, something was happening that the Jade Heavenly Dragon didn't even realize. At this time in the Coast Pavilion, Ayan came to see the young master, but she was surprised and said he hadn't come back yet. They came back together, and she checked everywhere, but couldn't find him anywhere. But then excitement seized her, and she began to shout to him. Hikran got the information from her and asked, "Is it true?" Ayan started waving her head and saying that it was like that. Hekrian got angry, for he realized that he should have noticed his disappearance. Those people from the Northern Blade Association were acting hostile. Everyone knows that they don't just retreat, and he missed this moment. Pen asked Hekrian what he thought was the matter. Hekrian replied that perhaps something had happened to the young master, and she must notify the 5 Clans League immediately, so that they have time to react. Everyone was saying that the Heavenly Jade Dragon had disappeared out of the blue. Namgung Hekrian immediately notified the leader of the 5 Clans League. The Shaolin abbot was also informed of this news. Ze laughed and said that he knew this would happen. They decided to act openly no matter what. If this young man truly inherited Master Huining's strength, no one from the Northern Blade Association would be able to handle him. But his disappearance was surely behind it. The Northern Blades were behind it. Monk asked the leader what they should do in that case. Tsu replied that it was a good idea to start by seeing how events unfolded. The leader of the 5 clans asked how was this possible? Hekrian replied that there had been a small quarrel with the military advisor of the Northern Blades Association. The leader said that in that case, young Master Zhu was the victim of these people's conspiracy. But then the leader of the tramps came in and asked, "What? What did he just hear?" The leader of the vagabonds told them to tell him everything in detail. Everyone was surprised that Poon Chongho himself had come to them. The leader of the Northern Blade Association, Dakuhan Zhong, asked, "Even the king of vagabonds had come? That old man hasn't been seen in public since his father retired. So why all of a sudden?" The Khan immediately ran out and shouted to his men to get out of the way. The warriors said that even if they are considered the king of the vagabonds, they are acting too hastily. They don't know what they are talking about. The Vagrant King and the past leader of the association, Sleeping Dragon, were close friends. Seo said that even without being in the association, Pun Chongho is one of the oldest Murim warriors. No wonder he came in so unceremoniously. At this time, at the Divine Sword Pavilion, a meeting about Zhu was taking place in the meeting hall. Han told everyone to be clear. The entire area of the Northern Blades Association is being searched. The rogue leader asked, "Is this as big a province as Hunan or the whole of Kaifeng? There are only 15,000 warriors here, and they can't find one person among them? And if something happens to the young master, he'll sick the whole army of vagabonds on them, and they won't let the Northern Blades Association get away with it." Huang was lost at this moment and thought, the leader of the vagabonds is definitely human. Who would even behave like that? Is this weird old man really the king of the vagabonds? Tsugong's abbot is also one of those. He knows of course that Tsu thinks he's the culprit. Why, even though the whole situation is highly suspicious, he hasn't said a word all this time? Although there are rumors that this kid has inherited Master Huining's strength. If Zigong blames Naz for the kid's disappearance, the relationship with Shaolin will become even worse. It was the Shaolin that opposed the attack on the demonic sections. Surely the monks are using this situation to avoid participating in the war. Abbot Zigong is a fearsome man who never lets his guard down. What is this elder of the Southern Blades anyway? And that Dakuhan Zhong is always acting arrogant. What a sight. The rogue leader turns to the man and says he's the one from the Pyong clan. What's he so happy about? Is it a holiday? Or did his father bring him up like this? The leader of the 5 clans said no and apologized to the master. At this time in the coast pavilion, Zhu was walking around and remembered Solon saying that they would meet in exactly 24 hours. Zhu stretched and thought he should come back tomorrow. And that's just fine. And he hoped it wasn't a trap. The demon turned to the guy and asked, "He's not going to do what she told him to do, right?" Zhu asked, "Why not?" The demon asked, "Boy, what did he meet into this damsel? Doesn't he find it strange that she trusted a man she's seeing for the first time in her life?" Zhu replied to him that he was unlikely to understand, though to him her motives were obvious. Nor does he want to think that she lied. The demon told Zhu that he's a man. He shouldn't trust a woman, she'll betray him. And this disease should be abandoned, it's useless. Zhu got angry and told him to get off his back. The demon thought the guy was really stupid. He was actually in a hurry to make his name famous again in Murim. Zhu looked around and saw people and asked, "Where are these guys going in such a hurry?" He walked up to a guy and asked what all the commotion was about. The warrior told Zhu that he wouldn't believe it. It was all because of one man. The leaders of all the Murim organizations were even called for him. He heard he was kidnapped. But he doesn't even know what the man looks like. But they have to find him somehow. Zhu said it's not an easy task. But do they even know the name of it? The warrior replied that it seemed to be Dragon Jade or something. Khan asked the soldier, "Did you find out anything?" The warrior replied that unfortunately, no. The leader of the 5 clans asked the warrior what he regretted. The warrior turned around to Master Pyong and replied, "Didn't he think he was talking too much?" Pyong said in an angry voice, "Should he keep his opinion to himself? Let him listen to him here. How the heavenly jade dragon disgraced them. And now he's disappeared just inside the association's territory. Yes, it's obvious." The warrior said it's lies, slander, and provocation. The tramp leader shouted to hell with words. "Let's fight if that's what it takes." Just then, someone said that the heavenly jade dragon master had arrived. The leader of the vagabonds was surprised and asked where he was. And then Zhu came in and asked, "What's going on, honored ones?" The leader of the vagabonds immediately turned to the young emperor. "Is he really alive and well?" Everyone at this moment was surprised that the vagabond king called the boy a young emperor. Zhu approached the leader of the vagabonds and asked that he stand up. Han saw that Poon Chanwo is the king of the vagabonds. He is one of the oldest and most respected warriors of the Murim, and knelt down in front of the boy. Does he really know who this guy really is? Zhu relayed to Master Poon that he was beginning to be suspected. "Have him do something quickly." Poon turned to him and asked him if he knew how scared they were when he disappeared. He even lost the power of speech. Called him the young emperor. Zhu laughed and replied that no one was wrong. The vagabond king always overestimated him. Poon told the young master that he was so overexcited. Zhu apologized and said that his indiscretion had agitated such important people. May the great masters forgive him, and he would have no words to describe how guilty he felt toward the association leader. Han replied that it was no big deal. "Well, we should call it a day, as long as everything's in order." And they could sit down at the table? Everyone agreed, and without hesitation they stayed and sat down at the table. Han asked Zhu, "Maybe another cup?" He saw that they had all decided that someone would believe them. But who is this guy really? How did he even get into the Murim? Heavenly Jade Dragon Zhu. He'll find out everything about him. And so began the dinner organized by Dakuhan Chong. The atmosphere was friendly, although the 2 people at the table were on pins and needles. Hekrian thought at that moment, why was he even here? Was Zhu thinking why he was seated at the head of the table? One of the main principles of the Murim was openness. After the reservation of the Vagabond King, they were seated at the same table with the greatest leaders of the Murim. Of course, the celestial destroyer was the center of attention. And he tried to remain calm under the pressure of other people's gazes. Zhu could see they were all burning a hole in him with their stares. What's the history behind this guy? Han wondered. Why did the king of the vagabonds call him the young emperor? Pyong asked Hekrian that he said he had personally seen martial artist Wen Yun. The guy replied that he had. Zhu at this moment hoped that he wouldn't say anything that would cause him more trouble. Hekrian said it was an incredible sight. He used the long-lost technique of master Huining, of whom only legends remain. He couldn't imagine seeing it with his own eyes. Pyong asked him, "Really? It's just unbelievable." Zhu turned to everyone and said that he had just had a lucky break. Moreover, Abbot Zigong hadn't tested his abilities yet. The leader of the vagabonds said that it was a matter of time. "But when it happens, won't they become one of the elders of the Shaolin?" Zhu jumped into the conversation and replied that no. He is hardly worthy of such a thing. Zi said that the king of the vagabonds is right. Master Huining is one of the founders of Shaolin. It is only natural if his follower, an owner of the knowledge of the forgotten technique, can take a high position in their temple. Is there any sect in Murim that does not attach importance to titles? If the monks certify his martial art, he will be treated properly in the temple. Han asked Su Hao to him. What was it to him? Superior to Su's words that the Heaven Destroyer would receive the same honors as him. Feng said, coming out, he will occupy one of the highest positions in the orthodox Murima sects. To address the young emperor added the weight of Poon Chongho, therefore, the interest in the celestial destroyer increased even more. Zhu stopped them and said that no, you shouldn't say that. He is only a newcomer who has recently become part of the Murim. Han thought again at this moment, where did he even come from? Heard that the guy uses the martial arts of the Shaolin monks. But if these are Master Huining's techniques, Shaolin is the foundation of all orthodox Murim sections. Its influence on them cannot be described in words. And then there's the vagrant king who has the widest network of spies and strongest warriors. And to become the ruler of the Murim, he needs their help. It's a good thing he didn't touch that puppy. Otherwise he would have gotten into trouble. And now he needs to build a good relationship with this guy to get the support of the Tramp King. Too bad he doesn't have a second daughter to do that. The dinner continued, though everyone at the table was immersed in their own thoughts. However, everyone present had Zhu's name in their minds, and in a difficult vote, 70% of those who voted were in favor of the Northern Blades Association's proposal. Since the opponents of the proposal had no valid arguments, the association's chapter gave permission for his plan to go forward. For the first time in the 1,000-year history of the Murim, the Orthodox Way declared war on the demonic way. And as a result, the strongest organization was born. Demon and Zhu were in the forest, and asked the guy what he was asking to teach him how to fence with his sword. Zhu replied that it was like that and today he had an important job to do. And since he now had his own swords, he thought it would be a good time to learn how to use them. The demon replied that he was unrivaled in swordsmanship. He will teach him everything he knows, and let the warrior raise his weapon. Zhu demonstrated this and asked, "Is it like this?" The demon replied that that was it. Now let him try to launch it as far as he can. As far as he can, Zhu replied that he understood everything. He did not relax and immediately applied his energy to the sword and dispatched it. The demon in the moment immediately told him to summon it back. Zhu was surprised and asked, "So suddenly?" The sword in a moment started to go back, and halfway through it got stuck in a tree. Zhu was greatly surprised at this point. The spirit said that the heavenly demon's sword could cut through even the hardest stone. And Zhu couldn't even cut down bamboo with it. And when the sword flew farther than 30 meters, his internal energy could no longer reach it, so he lost control. It's not strong enough. With this level of energy, he was just practicing swordsmanship right now. Zhu thought, wasn't he trying to learn swordsmanship? Demon asked him what rank he thought this sword was. Zhu saw that demon was getting too into the role of a teacher. Zhu replied to the demon that he didn't know. The demon said supreme, meaning his strength is related to the flow of his chi energy. Once she reached the right level, Zhu would be able to fight freely with such a blade. Zhu asked, the sword under energy control? Why make it so complicated? The demon replied that there was nothing complicated about it. For now, they will try to master the rank intangible sword. After going through a few hours of training, Zhu was already starting to get used to everything and gaining a lot of experience. Zhu flailed through the trees with his sword with his hand movements. He said that he was able to strike with his sword at this level as well. The demon said it was nothing of the sort. Its energy couldn't even break the veil of blades. Let him release the stream and unleashed it, and created a hurricane of swords. Zhu asked, unleashing the energy? Like this? Immediately, he began to demonstrate what demon had asked him to do. The demon saw that the kid managed to reach the hurricane of swords on the first try. This kid is getting stronger by the hour. An hour later, Zhu was already lying on the ground and said that he was about to die. Heavenly demon, what rank did he reach? The demon replied that he was on the level of more intangible. Shu was surprised and asked, more? So there is another one between the two ranks? The demon replied that it was like this. The rank above intangible sword uses the power of nature to increase the energy of the sword and is called the sword of nature. Zhu didn't understand and asked if this was a joke or what. The demon replied that it was not a joke. Let him imagine how ordinary rain turns into a rain of sword energy. And such a one would kill an entire squad of warriors. What happens if you turn the wind into a hurricane of that energy? Or use lightning as a sword? Zhu asked, meaning he would be able to do something like that. The demon replied that he could. And on the next one? Zhu asked, another rank? The demon answered yes, but he can't explain it himself. He had to think about it for a while. Zhu asked, so there is a rank above the intangible sword and nature sword? Which one is it then? The demon replied that it was a space sword. And let him not be surprised. And for now, let him not think about it yet. If he started to develop too fast, he would attract their attention. Zhu asked, Mirima? The demon replied, no. He's not talking about Murim. It's more than Murim. Zhu didn't dwell on it, and came to the Divine Sword Pavilion. He wondered why the leader of the Northern Blade Association had only invited him to the dinner. He expected to be the center of attention after everything that had happened. But not this much. So he decided that he should take the opportunity to get to know the head of the association better. Khan met the young master and told him to come in. After all, he wants to have a special dinner for him today. Why shouldn't he sit down? Zhu bowed and replied that he was not worth such honors. He was very happy to receive his invitation, and this pavilion is really very beautiful. He doesn't even know if he's worthy of being here. Han thought that if he couldn't get rid of it, then he would accept it as only he knew how to do. Han told the guy if he wanted, he could stay in the Northern Blades Association. They could build a separate pavilion for him. Zhu wondered, from this turn of events, and he became very curious. Why would there be such respect? Zhu replied that it wasn't worth the hassle. He'll just settle for empty. Han asked the guy if he was sure it would be enough for him. Han thought the guy wished he would clear out an entire pavilion for him. Zhu told the master that he was just kidding. And the master saw that the bastard liked to bullshit. Han told Zhu that he must have gotten hungry in the meantime, so we could continue the conversation over lunch. Zhu sat down at the table surprised, for the food was set on golden dishes and everything looked very bright. In his head, he wished Confucius would bite him. It was the first time he had seen so many dishes on the table at once. At the same time, as an heir, he ate 3 meals a day. But I haven't seen anything like this, some unfamiliar ingredients. Even judging by this food, it's clear how rich the Northern Blades live. Han asked the kid to give it a try. I'm sure he'll like the way they cook here. The chefs here are even more talented than the emperors. Zhu started laughing and asked the gentleman, really? And in his head he realized that this Han was already pissing him off. Zhu moved to speak and asked, did he really want to destroy the demonic sects? Khan replied that it was decided by a vote. The decision is undeniable, so all orthodox organizations are obliged to follow them. Zhu realized that the nasty man sitting in front of him was making it all up. He asked Han how they planned to win. Khan replied that the first thing to do is to put together a Murima alliance. And he thinks it will take about a year. Zhu said that the demonic sects are based in Hangzhou, but their secret hideouts are everywhere. It will take a long time to completely destroy the villains. But then, when all the demons have fallen, the Murim alliance will be abolished? Han realized that this kid was trying to figure out his motives, and then he told the guy that he doubted it. They will decide on one thing at the general vote after the victory, but he hopes that this organization will remain forever. Wouldn't that guarantee peace in the Murim? Zhu realized that this would only guarantee him a rich life, and that was all. The boy asked the Lord if there were any variables to this plan. Han replied that he wouldn't call them variables. Rumor has it that the heavenly demon martial art has been revived. Zhu gave a surprised look and asked, how could it be? Han replied that they say someone who calls himself a disciple of the heavenly demon has appeared, and his fighting technique completely replicates the demonic technique. Zhu said in surprise that this is how it turns out. Inwardly, he realized that it was him, but the master wouldn't know about it. Han said that there are so many legends about the heavenly demon, It's impossible to say for sure which is true and which is fiction. Zhu looked at the demon and asked if he had anything to say. The demon gave a smart look and said no. Han said, speaking of which, would you be willing to join the fight for justice? The Murim alliance they had formed was in great need of young and talented warriors like Zhu. If the council approves, he will be able to take one of the top positions in it. Zhu saw that this gentleman already considers himself the local emperor, by the looks of it. He wants him to be one of his pawns. Zhu told the lord that he thought so highly of him. A warrior with so many flaws. And perhaps he needs time to think it over. Han was surprised that the kid didn't fall for that, too. And then he said there was something else. A special offer, just for him, the young master. In a moment he pointed his fingers and a girl came out. She asked her father if he had called her? Khan replied that he had and told her to pass. And then Zhu was frightened and wondered what the master himself was up to. Han asked the girl why she didn't say hello to the guest. The girl immediately realized that this was the guy who had come at night. The girl greeted him and said her name was Daku Solan. Zhu realized that this was how the master had decided to lure him in. He stood up and introduced himself as a jade dragon. And he was honored to meet such a beautiful lady. Han turned to Solan and told her to sit with them. He asked Zhu what he thought about it. Since it's his daughter, he's not going to give her to just anyone. Zhu in his head was already realizing that he was already fed up with this devil. How many people had this kid already promised her as a wife? Zhu said that he has seen many beautiful women in Murim, but none of them compared to Solan. Zhu did his best to relay the words to his sister, and asked her if she had forgotten that tonight was the night. Han says she's 19 now, and it's time to get married. But to whom? Maybe Mr. Zhu? Zhu replied that it was too great an honor for him. To begin with, the master shows such care for him. If he wishes, he will do whatever the master orders him to do. Han saw and realized that everything was ready and the guy was on his side. Zhu stood up and said he had to go now, because he was expected. Han replied to the guy for delaying him so much. Zhu bowed to the Honorable Solan and said, "See you soon." Solan asked her father about the man. But Han replied to ignore her. Let her be quiet and let her continue her preparations for the wedding. It would take place next spring. Solan asked, but with whom? Han asked her, what did she think? With the son of the head of the Southern Blades Alliance. Solan didn't want to and started to deny it. Han told her to stop talking. Let her just do as she is told. A passerby asked if there was going to be a festival tonight. The guy said yes. They said that in honor of the decision regarding the war against the demonic sects, there would be a feast until morning. Zhu came to the free flow pavilion at this time. He thought, where should he start? The girl asked Solan if she was ready. Solan answered that she was. She asked the lady if she had thought it over well. Is she ready to trust this Zhu? After all, if she disappeared, there would be real chaos here. Solan replied that she knew the girl was worried. But she believed that everything would be all right. Zhu had heard all this, that she had already managed to tell everything to this girl he had followed at night. The demon was telling the guy to see for himself. Tell him to drop it, and leave before it's too late. Zhu replied that no. A man has to keep his promises. Solan asked why the young master was still absent. The girl replied that maybe he was afraid that she would start yelling at him. And then Zhu asked her who did she think he was? The girl was surprised and in a moment took a defensive stance. The girl thought, why didn't she feel that he was so close? In a moment, Zhu said that look, she was the one who almost ran them down on her black horse. The girl pointed her finger and said, is that the crazy one? Zhu asked, who else is crazy? What she was doing on horseback was crazier. And then the girl took off her mask and said that she could not trust her mistress to some obscure type with no tribe. Zhu asked, what was she going to do now? Why did she take off the mask? He turned to Solan and asked if she was ready. Solan said yes and asked him to wait a minute. Zhu saw the bag and asked what is it? The girl replied that it was just clothes and some jewelry. Zhu told her to leave everything here and just follow him. But that girl stood in front of them. Zhu asked her, she wouldn't go with them, right? The girl put on her mask and replied that she would naturally go. Zhu asked the mistress, she's joking, right? Solan replied that no. Huang saw as her significant other. Zhu replied that it wasn't that they couldn't. Let the black hat listen to him. He can't take responsibility for her as well, so let him try to keep them out of trouble. Sa replied that she would take care of herself. Instead, let him be prepared to answer for his words. Sa thought, judging by the way the guy was able to get close to her unnoticed. He's as easy as he looks. She thinks he's going to be nothing but trouble. Sa turned to the young master and asked, "He's not going to leave here without taking action, is he?" Zhu asked, "What kind of measures?" Sa replied that she doesn't know him and her mistress doesn't know how to fight. Zhu asked, "So what? It doesn't matter. His skills are enough to just pick up and go." Sa said that even so, he wouldn't be able to overcome the guards with the mistress in his arms. Or has he already solved that problem? Zhu thought about it, and replied that it was true. He asked Solon to come over to him. The girl asked him why. Zhu immediately took his hands on her face, and Solon was startled red in the face. She asked him what he was doing. Zhu asked Demon if he thought it would work. The demon replied that it is over and will only take a moment. Zhu turned to Solon and asked that she listen carefully to what he was about to tell her. Tell Sa to do the same. Sa got angry and thought, how dare this guy call Madam just by her first name? And why doesn't she resent it? Zhu said that he will change Solon's face now. And let her calmly listen to his plan without denial. He'll change her face to a different one, and then they'll quietly walk out of here together. As soon as they pass the security post, he'll take Solon away, and the soldiers only hang around the posts. Especially with the banquet tonight, there are fewer guards in this part of the association. Solon asked the guy how he would change her face. Is that even possible? Zhu replied that he wouldn't have suggested it otherwise. Solon said that she didn't want her face to be different. The guy replied that she shouldn't worry, it would be the same after a while. Sa asked him, he's not going to use the metamorphosis technique, is he? Zhu asked, what does she herself think? Sa told the guy to listen and Madam doesn't know much about martial arts. Zhu replied that he knows and that's why he told them to listen carefully. Zhu asked Sa to bring one of the maids here. The one who goes in and out of the pavilion a lot. He needs to see her face, and as soon as it's ready, he'll show them how good he is at this technique. And then the maid came in and asked Sa, what's the matter? Sa replied that it wouldn't take long and let her forgive her for waking her up. Let her just stand there. Sa wondered if it would work. Even she doesn't feel his presence here. And then Zhu said that was enough and let him send her back. Sa told the maid that that was it and let her go back to her bedroom. The maid was surprised and left. On the way, the maid saw that Mrs. Huang Sa was kind of strange today. Zhu asked Solon to sit in front of him. Zhu began to apply his abilities in this technique that the girls were even frightened by what they saw. In a moment, Zhu touched his hands across the girl's face, and in a moment, a bright light flashed. Sa was greatly surprised and said that Madam's face had become the same as maid Jiam's. Zhu turned to Sa and said she would admire him later. She might touch her face one more time, but then straight to the exit. Sa asked Madam if she was okay? Solon asked what was she talking about. Sa replied that mistress trusted this guy so easily. Solon laughed and asked, does it really look like that from the outside? Even his father couldn't get rid of him, so he decided to bring him over to their side. He always gets what he wants at any cost. It seems to be hereditary. She'll take help from anyone to get out of the Northern Blades Association. Sa told mistress that she understood. And understood deep down that she needed to respect her choice. Heading for the exit in front of them, security came down and asked where they were going at this late hour. Sa replied to them that where it was necessary, and they were out at the order of the mistress. Let them get out of the way immediately. The guard asked Sa, doesn't she know there is a curfew after midnight? Sa asked, and that's why they can't clear the way? Have they completely forgotten who the lady is? The guard replied that he was only reminding them of the rules. Let them pass. Sa immediately turned to GM and said they had to go. The guard asked how long GM had been wearing those uniforms. The guy replied that he should stop talking nonsense, and it was time to get ready for the changing of the guard. Zhu told Sa to just keep moving forward. The girl asked him where to go now. Zhu replied that they shouldn't look for him and just go behind that tree together. Listening to the order, Sa asked where he was. Zhu immediately appeared and grabbed Solon and ordered Sa to follow him. Without wasting a moment, he flew into the sky. Sa was surprised and thought, what kind of technique is this? But she doesn't have time to figure it out. She must leave immediately. In flight, Solon relaxed and smelled a pleasant odor. Shu asked her where she wished to go. Solon replied that one could go to the vagabond sect. Shu asked, "Is it to their group at the emperor's tomb?" Solon replied that was right, since the guy was friends with their king. Shu agreed and said they would be there soon. After a couple minutes, they descended like a falling meteorite into the emperor's tomb. Shu asked if she was okay. Just then, Sa ran towards them and couldn't breathe properly. Shu asked what was taking her so long. Sa was exhausted and weak, but managed to apologize to him. In her head she realized that she wasn't a racehorse. Ju told them to listen to him carefully. Now he must return to the association banquet. Solon asked the guy, "So he left there to get them?" "He's lost all fear." Ju replied that no one would even think that he could have taken them out in such a short period of time. All the more reason for him to give himself an alibi if he was at the banquet. "Let them tell the vagabonds that they are from the heavenly jade dragon, and they will accept them. They are lucky to be on good terms with the king of the vagabonds, and don't let them glow too much. He'll try to get back as fast as he can." Solon was surprised and said he was so fast. Ju said on the flight that he wished he could see the face of the head of the association when he discovered the disappearance. He can't wait for that. Arriving at the feast, Hekrian asked Ju, where did he go? Didn't they agree to drink until dawn? He hadn't forgotten, had he? Ju could see that this guy was already wasted. He told them how he could. "So, have them pour him a drink immediately." Ju started drinking. "People should see him partying and drinking here. Because they'll all give him an alibi." Ping began to laugh and told the young master that he was walking high. "He knows how to drink, he knows how to fight, but what does he not know?" To be honest, he hated him at first. After all, it turned out that the master could drink and fight, and it seems he was lucky for the first time in his life when fate brought him together. Ju replied that he, too, had something to say. Meeting them was the best experience since he joined the Murim. Pan immediately pounced on him with a hug. Hekrian asked Ju what he thought he would do tomorrow. If he doesn't have any plans, let him go with them to the 5 Clans League. Ju replied that unfortunately he had business elsewhere, but he would definitely come to see them a little later. Hekrian rejoiced and said loudly that then they should now raise a farewell toast to their friendship. In the morning, Han asked the servant what he said. Was the wench missing? The servant replied that from what he had been able to find out, the young lady had not been kidnapped. Han got angry and asked, "What the hell is this nonsense? Is the guy trying to say that she ran away on her own?" The boy replied that the lady's pavilion was guarded by their warriors. It would be impossible to kidnap the lady while they were on guard. Besides, if the guard's words were to be believed, Sa's bodyguard and Jiam's maid came out of the pavilion after midnight last night. But when the maid was questioned, she said that she wasn't with Sa yesterday, and that she didn't leave the pavilion at all during the night. Han said that means she had her memory wiped? The guy said no and said it was a metamorphosis technique. The guy said that Madam had never been trained in martial arts, so either Sa or an outsider used the metamorphosis technique on Mistress. Han said that Sa wasn't that talented, so someone else was involved. Guy replied that it must be a real master, probably someone from the major sects or ancient clans. But didn't they all have a drink last night? Khan ordered the guy to make a thorough investigation and then report back. Have him check everyone, because anyone would be under suspicion. Now we must find the kidnapper at any cost. At this time, a stranger in a suit entered the underground secret place. Standing in front of the door, he told them to open it. The stranger asked the man if he was still alive. The man replied that yes, and he was still breathing. But no matter how much they tortured him, it was no use. The stranger asked what about his grandson? The man replied that he was silent too. The stranger sighed and told him to lead him there. He wished to see it for himself. Entering the torture room, the stranger saw blood scattered everywhere and a guy chained up. He told the guy that he and his grandson are incredibly stubborn people. You can't take that away from them. Last night, his granddaughter ran away. And does he think there's anyone who could have helped her? Her bodyguard isn't skilled enough to do something like that. The old man started laughing and told the guy he was crazy. Tell him to get out of here immediately. Guy immediately turned to the sleeping dragon and said that his son was dead and his grandson's life hung in the balance. And he's the last line of the Daku family. Doesn't he think it's worth saving her? The sleeping dragon replied that it was fate. Life or death, he doesn't care. The guy told Dr. Jung that he was a heartless man. I wonder how the granddaughter would feel if her grandfather said that. And now he should know that they will oppose the sects of the demonic path. And then drown all of Murim in blood. The name of the Northern Blades Association will go down in history. Jung asked the guy if he was okay. The guy was surprised and asked what? Is he talking about his Absolute Sword Sutra? But something tells him he never had one. He must have made it up on purpose to survive. Once he and his grandson are dead, this place will disappear. There will be no proof of their existence. Jung got angry and called the guy a nasty bastard. The guy got angry and asked, nasty? How can he say that to his son's face even though he's dead? At that time, in front of the pavilion, people were asking the guards what kind of lawlessness is going on here. Why aren't they being released? Who allowed the Northern Blades Association to behave like this? The guard replied that an investigation was underway, and he asks to cooperate with them even if it makes them uncomfortable. People shouted that they didn't even give a reason. This is real lawlessness. Due to the lack of any comments, people took the situation in stride. But the Northern Blade Association ignored the complaints and investigated thoroughly. The warriors questioned everyone about where they had been from 11 o'clock in the evening until 2 o'clock in the morning. Special attention was paid to high-ranking warriors. There were no exceptions. And then it was Zhu's turn. The boy asked the young master where he was and what he was doing at that time. Zhu asked, did he have to answer? And then the warrior replied that he did. Since he had nothing to hide, it wouldn't be hard to tell, right? However, if he is not, he may be in trouble. Zhu said he's not satisfied with the investigation. They're pushing him like he's committed some kind of crime. If the warrior wants to hear his answer, he can call the head of the association. And then the warrior got angry and called the boy an insolent puppy. Zhu said who would talk, or is he wrong about that? The demon asked the guy, he's going to run away, isn't he? He's not going to fight, is he? Zhu answered him to wait, he had an idea. They might be the first to make a mistake. And then the warrior turned to him and asked how dare he call out their leader? On what grounds? Zhu smiled and said that all the faces were familiar. Who did he think he was that he was talking to him like that for the second time? The warrior replied that he was the Heavenly Sword Law, the commander of the White Swordsmen of the Northern Blade Association, Yen Somu. Yen told him to answer the question now. Zhu told him, didn't the guy understand him the first time? He'll talk to the leader, commander. Yen lost his temper and asked Zhu, has he completely lost his mind? And immediately began to launch his sword attacks. Zhu didn't run away and grabbed this sword with 2 fingers and said that Yen is some kind of slow, for a heavenly sword law, and didn't humiliate himself, and put his sword away and made another attack. But Zhu dodged it as well. The demon asked Zhu if he could unsheath his sword now, right? Zhu replied that he felt sorry for those guys. Zhu didn't take this disrespect for long and decided to attack him himself, and immediately kicked him from his leg. Zhu saw the guy lying down, and applied the 18 Guanyin blood moon. The blow was so strong that fire flew out of Zhu's hand, and the warrior could do nothing more than get what he deserved. In a fight between the strong and the weak, the strong always wins. The people were all surprised and did not expect such a turn from him. Zhu asked the warrior that he calls himself the Law of the Heavenly Sword. Is such a title deserved to him? En was angry and still replied that they would fight to the death. Before he could even say a word, he died in a second. Han started laughing and said it was too much. His stupid subordinates just didn't recognize Zhu, the young master. And magnanimously, he apologizes. After this incident, Zhu flew to the girl's house. On the way, he thought that with the appearance of the association's leader, he had a chance to leave the association's territory. He was able to get out of an awkward position, but the brutality with which Dakukan dealt with the commander made Zhu feel disgusted with him. Zhu didn't hesitate and went down to the ground. Demon said the emperor is in exile, what's wrong with him? He's been in a bad mood since last time. Zhu replies that it's Dakuhan, and he's only thinking of him. Not only is he willing to marry off his daughter to anyone for power, but he treats his men like dogs. And this man is considered one of the most powerful in Murima. That's bullshit. The demon told the guy that he's this smart, and should realize, a strong man is in charge, not a kind man. Or is Zhu going to preach justice now? Isn't this about a girl named Solon? Zhu replied that it wasn't. The demon started to deny and replied that of course it is. The guy climbed up the mountain and said that the heavenly demon Huining. He feels that this event was very important, and he thinks it's time for him to increase his power and influence. Demon asked, does he want to be in power? The patriarch asked if in Murim he didn't want to become free. Zhu replied that it seemed like it would be hard to become free on his own. The demon started laughing loudly and told the guy that he was no fool. Until he became famous, he had to show off all his skills too. But when he was creating his sect, it helped him deal with all the difficulties. Zhu said that he would become an important person and fewer people would cross his path. Demon said the guys got the gist of it. How'd he decide to bolster his credibility? Does he really want to enlist the support of the 5 Clans League, or the Shaolin Temple? Zhu replied that no. If the Northern Blades Association aspires to a leadership role, it would be unwise to openly antagonize it. And now let Demon answer honestly. Does the demonic sect still exist? The demon began to guess and merge with the answer. He replied that he didn't even know. Zhu asked him how he didn't know that. He reacted strangely when she was mentioned. The demon said 1,700 years. Zhu asked what was he talking about. The demon replied that it had been that long since the sect had existed under him. Zhu was surprised and asked the demon that he lived over 1,500 years ago. The demon asked the guy, didn't he know? When he heard this, conclusively, he thought that the heavenly demon sect had long disappeared. However, after Dakuhan's words, he hesitated. Zhu asked him if he was referring to the rumors about his sect. But didn't he cause them? The demon replied to the guy that he was his apprentice, not a member of the cult. His clan had long ago become a legend that people tell each other. Rumors travel fast. The opposite is also true. Zhu was surprised and asked what it meant. The patriarch replied that it is that rumors appear quickly but also disappear quickly, young master. The demon said that the talk about the heavenly demon sect is alive even now. Whether they are true or not, people seem to think that there is something similar to his sect. Zhu stopped him and said that there is just because of idle gossip. And demon thinks his sect is alive? The demon answered exactly what it was. It is secret and powerful. That's why it exists in the shadows from human eyes. If the adepts didn't stop living by his charter, the clan couldn't die. Zhu didn't believe it and asked, what is he talking about? One could better go and see if his guys were alive. He turned to the demon and asked, is he really saying that people live here? Zhu asked if anyone would live here. The demon replied that if they were not here, then all his followers were long dead. Zhu made up his mind and said that he would check it out now. He immediately entered his inner energy and applied the God's Eye. At a point, Zhu said that he was sure he had just seen someone. If it hadn't been snowing, they would have been much easier to find. And then Zhu thought about the snow. And in the moment, he remembered and asked, why hadn't he thought of it before? The demon asked him, to what? The patriarch said that he seemed to understand what the young master was up to. Zhu immediately applied the lung technique and drew air into his body. In a moment, he shouted in his own voice, and then all the snow started falling off the mountains, and everything cleared up in a flash. He said he thought it would work. The demon thought that it looks like he made a mistake. Zhu immediately looked around and saw that there was a tunnel. Zhu got excited and said he had found it. He slowly entered the tunnel, but everything was so narrow. The guy saw that everything was nicely laid out on the ground and told them to take a look, because there was clearly a human hand at work here, and he could feel the warm energy emanating from here. Zhu didn't stop there and continued on his way. After a few hours, Zhu began to shiver from the cold. He was tired of walking in the ground and cried out, where have they all gone? He left everything and said he was giving up the search. The demon asked him, was he crazy? Did he give up after finding just what he needed? Zhu asked what was he talking about. The demon replied for him to look at this stone. The guy asked what kind of sign is it? The demon replied that it is a symbol of the body. All his followers know it. There must be a mechanism nearby that can be activated. Zhu found something and asked, this one? He immediately pressed the mechanism and asked demon, like this? The demon replied that's right. First you have to press the third, now the fifth. Zhu said that it wasn't that easy. Pressing all the keys in front of them opened up a staircase that headed into the ground. Zhu rejoiced and said that it seemed to have found one. and it was time to go inside and find followers. Walking down the stairs, Zhu stopped in surprise, for in front of him appeared a beautiful house inside a cliff. He said there's a whole forest underground. How is that even possible? Is this cave connected by tunnels to other places? The demon replied that apparently so. One could immediately see his followers. Zhu used the heavenly demon's trace concealment technique. In a moment, he saw people appear in front of him. The girl in red said she wondered who would win. The girl in blue replied that the outcome would be decided by the alder demon. The girl in red pulled up and said she didn't even know, and hoped they could get out of here after that. The girl in blue said that if the blood demon wins, they won't be able to get to Zhongwen. She doesn't even know. Zhu realized that if the alder demon won, he would be able to go outside. Otherwise, he would be stuck here. The girl in red said how much she wants to go out to Zhongwen and see the whole Murim with young Master OK Kirin. She wondered who they were talking about. Some popular type? The guy told the sky demon to take a look. The demon replied that it was the least he could expect from his followers. They have a pretty good collection of weapons here and unlimited potential warriors. Shu called him a braggart and said it was time to move on. Like lightning, he started moving around the sect. At one point he stopped and said that this building looks pretty good. We should go over there and check it out. He slowly climbed the building and saw through the window a girl lying on a bed and a servant beside him. The girl said that even if the alder demon lost, it wouldn't change anything. He would still side with the winner, wouldn't he, young master? The demon was saying what a great sect he had. The girl said that no matter how it was, he from the Northern Palace wanted to take control. But for now, the Yellow family has their backs. Besides, Damde and Guiyang aren't that close. In the end, everything leads to the Northern Palace gaining all the power. Have the guy go and relay this to his brother, the Frown Sky Demon, that everything will go according to their plan. Zhu heard all this and thought that this was, what was this, some sort of league of the 5 clans in the Heavenly Demon sect? The guy replied that he understood everything and would go already. The girl in the moment stopped him and asked him what his name was. The guy replied that his name was Yelui Jiangnan. The girl said he could be her nephew. So let him come over and rub his aunt's feet. Chan was surprised at such a suggestion, and trembling slowly began to get to her feet. He slowly began to approach with trembling hands, and the girl immediately lifted her foot to the side. The girl said he was very pathetic, and immediately kicked him out of the room. Zhang ran away like a cowardly cat in the moment. Zhu immediately asked, "What about him?" The girl was momentarily startled by his voice and asked who was he. Zhu asked, "Is there really such a beautiful girl in this sect?" He looked at her for a long time and did not take his gaze away. In the moment, he wondered if she was nervous or not. And why was she staring so intently? The girl called him baby and asked if he would like to massage her feet. The demon said that she was insolent, and yet she dares to ask such a thing from a follower of a great heavenly demon, and she seems to be an excellent reader of body language, and apparently uses the technique to keep her young. Shu held out his hand and told her to only let him. The girl replied that he could start. Shu didn't take any chances and used his techniques on her. The girl immediately felt that he had paralyzed her energy points. Zhu told her to listen to him carefully. From now on, she would answer the questions honestly. The girl thought he did it with such speed that she didn't even have time to react. Who was this guy really? Zhu said as he introduced himself first. He is the disciple and successor of the heavenly demon. Zhu looked at her intently, and said that he could see that she didn't believe him. Let her think. Would she have been able to sneak into the sect's hideout on her own without his help? Does she also have doubts? The girl realized that she believed. And believes every word of such a handsome man. Shu asked. Why was she blushing? And plus the guy didn't leave an energy trail, which speaks in favor of his thinking. The demon told him the emperor was in exile. Does he remember what it told him before? Shu told him to be more specific. The demon replied that it was a demonstration of what he could do. It's better to see once than to hear 100 times, right? Anyway, let you not try to convince her with words but act. The guy started warming up and said it would be easier. Shu stepped back at a distance and said that she would figure it out for herself now. Whether or not he was the successor of the heavenly demon, there are 3 fighting techniques in Murim that the demon did not pass on to his disciples. The 3 swords of the heavenly demon, Azura Destruction. And let the girl watch carefully, the last technique, is the limbo of the heavenly demon. The girl was surprised and saw that the guy was telling the truth about the 3 spirits on the right, left, front, and back. A total of 12 spears. She had only heard legends about this ability. The guy wasn't lying about being the successor of a heavenly demon. But how is that possible? Zhu stopped and said, he could see by the look on her face that she now believed him. The energy points should be working by now. The girl started to move and asked the guy, is he really his heir? Zhu replied that he was. And that's why he wants to ask something. Let her tell him everything about the current situation and power in the sect. In the story, Yellow Yenren, the Flame Elder, stood in front of the Emperor in exile. There were only 5 families in the sect. The first one was Tanmok, the surname of the heavenly demon himself. And then there were 4 disciple families, Buchan, Yellowy Damned, Gyan. In the heavenly demon sect, the law is of paramount importance. The first states that only direct descendants of the Tanmok families can become the head of the sect. However, 250 years ago during the 7th Demon War, the head of Chonya died. The remaining family members did not live long at all, so the seat of the sect head is empty to this day. Zhu asked, don't they have a leader? If so, the families would surely fight over the place. However, nothing around them indicates a massacre. So there is someone who is temporarily acting as the leader? The girl saw that the boy was smart. She thought he was just another idiot who only knew how to wave his arms, but she was wrong. Ren said that while the leader's seat is empty, the Council of Elders and Guardians will fulfill his duties. The council is headed by a descendant of a collateral branch of the Tamik family, whose members cannot lead the sect. He is followed by 3 guards and then the 7 elders, and finally the 4 demon lords. Zhu said that the guards and elders are just old men in power. Ren answered that blood demon, alder demon, poison demon, and frowning sky demon. They are also representatives of each of the 4 families. Zhu thought to get control of the sect, he would need to defeat them all. Ren said there are still 4 elders and 4 flowers. They are important personalities among the women. Zhu asked her, is she a senior flame? One of the 4, if he understood correctly? Ren replied that was correct. However, the 12 demon masters in the heavenly demons sect had the most followers. Zhu said, how confusing. So how many people do they have in total? Ren answered that those with real power are about 2,000. But if you count everyone, it's 20. Zhu thought that in the Northern Blade Association, there are about 15,000 people. He said to Ren, which is wonderful. It's just wonderful. She's going to help him a lot. Ren said it's not a great thing. It's going to be hard, because he doesn't have any helpers to convince the others that he's the successor to the heavenly demon. Zhu asked, how come there isn't? There's her, the Flame Elder. And then Ren was confused in the moment by his words. Ren had been thinking all this time, who was he really? He came out of nowhere, and now he wants to be the leader of the heavenly demon sect. How ambitious is this guy? He's talking nonsense. But she was very interested. Ren said she understood. She is willing to help him, but she has one condition. Zhu asked, what is it? Ren said if the guy promises to give her what she wants, she'll do whatever she can to help him. Zhu replied that if it was something he could do, they could make a deal with her. Ren immediately fell on her knee and said that she welcomed him, the successor of the heavenly demon. Zhu turned to Ren and asked what they would do. Ren replied that for him to be recognized as the successor and leader of the sect, he must first get approval from the elders and guards. Then he would need to subdue the 12 demon masters. And after that, the 4 demon lords. Zhu thanked her and told her that he would start moving to the top. In his head, he knew he had to convince the guards first. And then he stopped abruptly and wondered if he was even going that way. Ren had told him to be careful. The guards' hall is protected by 10 top swordsmen, and the elders' hall by 10 spirit warriors. They were all trained personally by the guards and elders. The demon told the guy, so to stay out of the way, he's just going to go around everyone. Does he really want to see what they can do? Zhu replied to the evil cloud that he is smart. Of course he wants to test them. But then he saw someone come through from the wall and attack him. The warrior asked loudly, who is here? But he missed, and Zhu was able to run back. The warrior said that's how weird things are. He could swear he felt the air move. Zhu asked Demon if his trace concealment technique didn't work on him. The demon asked, what did he want with such a low level of internal energy? Plus, This guy is using the same techniques. It was just that his energy level was higher, that's why he didn't detect it. Shu thought that it was to be expected that the sect members would use the founder's technique, and that might make it harder for him. The warrior was thinking at this moment, is he really getting old? Shu realized that if 10 top swordsmen were guarding just this place, one could not worry much. At this time in the meeting of the 3 elders, the guardian asked the first guardian, "How is the martial arts training of the children in the training pavilion going?" The first guardian replied that the preparations had already become satisfactory. There are many children with outstanding abilities in this set. The master asked if the demon of Ol has taken any action. Left guardian? The left guard replied to the gentleman that there was none. Since he began his studies in reclusiveness, nothing has been heard of him. In fact, in martial arts, a small but advantage is behind the blood demon. He thinks the older demon realizes this, so he tries to get stronger. Master asked, maybe they think he's stronger than a blood demon. If the majority of the sect members want to go out to Zhongwan, he'd better get in the lead. The left guard asked if the bloody one would then surrender. The lord replied that he was an outstanding fighter, and would be able to accept defeat. But the demon of Ol is too stubborn, and if burns 10 of the best swordsmen. Just then, 10 swordsmen appeared in front of them. The first one asked the lord what was the matter. The lord asked the swordsman, had they been counting crows all this time? A stranger had gotten in. The swordsman asked in surprise, stranger? Who is the lord talking about? But then he produced a knife and Zhu grabbed it, saying it was the first time he had seen something like this in the Murim. The swordsman began to ask, who is here? Let him show himself, and say how he came in. Zhu replied that this was not the main question. Zhu walked up to the lord and asked, so he's in charge here? The swordsman told him to stop or they would kill him. The master raised his hand and told them to stop. And yes, the Lord of the Guardians is standing in front of him. Zhu replied to the master that he was the destroyer of heaven, the disciple of the heavenly demon, and his successor. Ren asked Zhu if he wanted to know about the 3 guards. And now she's going to tell him everything. The left guard, golden-faced fire demon Tang Mok Hu. First golden shield demon General Tang Mok's son. However, the one who really deserves his attention is first guardian celestial demon counselor Tak Mok Chonan. He is over 200 years old, and this man is an incomparable martial artist. No one knows who he really is. It is said that one of the 12 demon masters is his apprentice. Shu thought that means this is a great warrior. Apparently, he was able to see him despite the heavenly demon technique. Shu turned to Mr. Chanong and said that he was a destroyer of the heavens, a disciple of the heavenly demon. Everyone was surprised and the left guard asked how dare he joke with his name like that? He has lost all fear. Zhu replied that the sense of Xia was basically alien to him, for he was definitely a disciple of the heavenly demon. Chonung said, what do you mean, His Excellency's successor? Shu answered him that it was like that. Chonan asked, what would he prove it with? Shu thought for a moment, and asked how could they do such a thing? He immediately took off his sword and showed them. The left guard and the first demon began to say that it was the Lord's sword. Is it really real and not some kind of fake? Shu asked, well, how's that for them? Do they believe him now? Chonong replied that if his old eyes were correct, they were really looking at the sword of a heavenly demon. However, it was not enough to accept him as the supreme leader of the sect. Shu was surprised and asked what? Chonan replied to the lad that if he returned the blade to them, they would treat him as an honored guest. But if he decided to encroach on his place as head, they would have no choice but to make him change his mind. Zhu started laughing and said that apparently in the heavenly demon sect, his own authority had fallen below the plinth. How could he do that? The demon at this time was saying that here they were parasites. Unbelievable. Who do they think they are? Shu asked him, was he sure he thought so? The swordsmen were all surprised and asked, is this a one-actor theater? Or is the guy just crazy? Chonan told the guy, if he really is his successor then you have to prove it not with things, but with your skills. Shu asked the swordsman, do they have a long way to go? The swordsman replied that they were almost there. The guy got excited and said that he was already bored, but judging by how brightly the fire burns, there's plenty of oxygen here. The swordsman said it was because the rocks here let air in. The swordsman led him to the tomb of the heavenly demon. Shu asked, is this where he is resting? Chonan told him it was simple. If he really is the successor, let him open the gate of the tomb and go in there and take one thing. Shu asked the guard which one. Chonan replied that it was a ring. It is a sacred object that once belonged to a heavenly demon. Such a symbol of power could only be worn by the founders of the sects of those times. There is a legend that the ring is engraved with the way to reach the state of enlightenment. Shu told Demon that the grandfather seemed to be talking seriously. He turned to him and asked if he could explain the ring. The demon replied that it was a ring he wore. A favorite piece of jewelry, by the way. It held the knowledge of all his battle techniques. Shu said that if it was true, such a thing would come in handy for him, right? He told Demon that the door doesn't open. Does he know? Is there some secret? It's just an iron wall. The first demon asked the first guard, are they really just going to let this guy enter the tomb? Chonan replied that judging from the technique the little guy used, he wasn't that far from the heavenly demon's teachings. The left guard said don't make him a leader for that, and for somehow getting a sword? Chonan replied that if he had abilities like a heavenly demon, he would open the tomb and take the ring. That would be reason enough to make him head, don't you think? He's up to the task. And he'll be fine with it. The left guard asked the first one, really? Chonan replied that's right. The tomb is most likely heavily guarded. Just then, the swordsman came in and addressed the guards. Chonan asked, is something wrong? He replied that this young man was asking him for a favor. Chonan asked what other favor? The swordsman replied that the boy wanted healing and nourishing elixirs. He also demanded that no one go near the tomb. Chonan was surprised and asked what could threaten the people at the tomb. The swordsman replied that the young master was going to pierce the gate with his sword. Shu prepared himself an akata, and Demon was telling him to concentrate on one point. Does he remember what he was told earlier? His weapon would withstand even such a blow. Shu remembered and said that they would now test the sharpness of his blade. He used his eye in a moment and stayed on one point. Shu said that he had definitely punched it. When he opened his eyes wide, he was very disappointed to see only a scratch. The demon started laughing and said it was just a scratch for his gait. Shu asked, should he have hit harder? And the tedious work continued. The constant strokes of the sword were not easy even for a fugitive emperor. He attacked the gate for 3 hours, however. Only a small chip appeared on it. But Zhu began to focus less on fighting techniques and more on concentrating his internal energy. The patriarch asked the young master if he was okay. The demon got angry and told his grandfather not to distract him. Suddenly he would definitely succeed next time. Zhu replied that there was no point in explaining how great a value the amount of internal energy had. One enlightenment would be enough to become much stronger and gain a whole new level of martial arts proficiency, and it all depended only on one's own determination. Shu realized that the performance of martial techniques directly depended on the flow of internal energy, and thanks to this, the sword itself will understand how to attack without blocking the flow from the heart. It is necessary to open the soul and intend to go all the way, and then the energy path will be paved. Shu began to let energy flow through his heart, softness, hardness, and flexibility. They all succeed each other and cease to exist separately. He repeated all the time for them all to go and come to the same true paths. After 28 hours 14 minutes and 24 seconds, Cho finally opened his eyes. The demon told Zhu that he congratulated him and asked how he was feeling. Shu replied that he didn't know. Is it even worth mentioning how insignificant his abilities were before this? It's hard to describe, but it was as if he had discovered a huge new world that he couldn't even imagine before. Turns out it wasn't just another one of his intangible and natural sword tricks. He would have lived happily ever after without knowing all this, Demon said, but it's a pleasure to discover it for yourself, isn't it? And this is just the beginning. Maybe he'll even reach the end someday. Shu asked, the end? But there isn't one. He will go on, and only he will decide when to stop. That's why you have to do something to feel alive. Shu believed in his ability, and picked up his sword. Shu felt as light as if his body had become hollow. Although he couldn't feel the fullness of the energy, he couldn't feel the fullness of the energy. He realized it, for he had comprehended an entirely different state. Shu thrust his sword into the wall and turned to the river of swords. That it should be transformed into the wind of swords, and all that would be left was the explosion of the sword. The sword didn't hesitate long and slowly began to enter the wall, and a bright light was increasingly visible. Zhu said that he had indeed become stronger, and he was overflowing with destructive power. Zhu grabbed his sword and said that now he would see where the heavenly demon ring was. Once inside, he was surprised and asked, "What is it?" he asked. "Is this really Jianguan? And here, a martial arts manual?" The patriarch asked. "Doesn't the young master like to read?" The demon asked. "Who even loves? Can these papers benefit someone who has opened let the energies of the heart?" The heavenly demon tomb was divided into 6 halls. The first one held the secrets of martial arts. The second room contained the manuals created by the past elders of the sect. The third room was given over to elixirs. Zhu entered the third hall and was greatly surprised. He said that there were more vials here than there were in the palace. "There's a lot of them in the palace." Zhu decided that he would need to come back here later. These elixirs could be very useful in the future. The fourth room was an armory, fully stocked with weapons. Each one had a brief explanation on it. The fifth knowledge hall, where information about the past leaders of the heavenly demon sect was gathered. There were life-size statues of them, books with their techniques and memoirs. Zhu said that according to the heavenly demon advisor, the last hall was where his personal belongings and jewelry were kept. The demon said that it was probably all melted away by now. Zhu asked, didn't he find it a little strange? Does just opening the tomb gate prove that he is the successor? He thought that of course it wasn't that simple, but it still didn't fit in his head. In the hall of the heavenly demon, Zhu arrived there and asked with surprised eyes, "Is it him, the heavenly demon?" The demon replied that the craftsman had managed to render his appearance very accurately. Zhu said that it was incredible, and then someone appeared from above and was attacking, saying how long it had been since he had smelled human odor. Zhu sensed the attack and used the technique of covering his tracks. He dodged in the moment and thought, "Who is this guy?" Zhu used the technique and thought, "He can't see him?" But the attacker crept up from behind and decided to make another attack. 500 years ago, the former demon lord, the strongest of the 4. One of the most influential figures in the history of the heavenly demon sect. One day, greed blinded him. He secretly entered the tomb and stole the ring of the heavenly demon, and then practiced martial arts in secret. However, the energy emanating from the ring was too great, and eventually this master went insane. Over 300 sect warriors sacrificed themselves to lock him in the tomb and to seal the entrance. This warrior has been alive all this time, living in this tomb. So when he smelled the man's scent, he decided to kill him. Zhu sealed himself into the wall and said that just a little more, and he would have been in big trouble. He said this guy's demonic energy is everywhere. But who is this guy? And why is he here? The guy attacked him and replied to Zhu that he would know if he survived him. Zhu saw in the moment that there was a sword in front of him. Zhu reacted in the moment and used his demon sword to repel the vile guy's attack. The guy was very strong and angry. He was so furious that he started using his legs in the fight. Zhu started to fight and saw that the enemy's blade was already in front of his eyes and had time to react to it. The demon said it was good, and the guy deflected the punch perfectly. The guy told Zhu that he wasn't that bad. Zhu asked him if he wanted to see what else he was capable of. The guy couldn't hold back such insults and went on the attack. The battle went on for several hours and Zhu tried not to die and attacked the guy several times. From such an attack, they were unable to hold their swords in their hands and they were thrown several meters away from them. Zhu saw that this guy's aura had become excellent, and there was more internal energy than him. The boy said how wonderful it was that he encountered such a warrior. Even though he's young, but he's close to a superior aura. The guy asked him, who was he? It was unlikely that those old men from the sect had just let him in here. And they certainly didn't raise such a good warrior. Zhu replied that he didn't know. Isn't it interesting in other ways? If his skills were so outstanding, he would have gotten out of here by now. But he's still stuck here. The guy was surprised and replied that there was nothing interesting about it, and he still had something to do here. The guy asked Zhu why he came here. Zhu replied that he had come for the ring of the heavenly demon. The guy said he understood, and so thought the counselor had sent him. Zhu replied that he hadn't. He just came to take back what was his. The guy asked Zhu in surprise to him, and he hadn't met a worthy opponent in a long time, and although it's all very nice. The guy picked up the sword and told Zhu to watch his tongue better. Zhu asked him if he was the one who told him and picked up the sword. Zhu told the guy that he himself should think about what he is saying. He is the successor of the heavenly demon himself. In the moment, Guy recalled his memories. How in battle he fought the boy and the boy lost. The boy cried lying on the ground. The boy appealed to Guang Chu to spare him this time. Let him remember the old days. Chu didn't feel sorry for the boy, and killed him that second. The judge said Chu was the winner. Chu looked at the audience and thought, what are they all so excited about? Just like a tiger is not excited after killing a rabbit, he is not excited about the fact that he killed this man. Chu said that it was too boring for him. Even though he was the strongest in the sect and kept it under control, he couldn't dispel his boredom. Chu was able to obtain the heavenly demon ring, and repeatedly tried to match its power, but he only succeeded for a moment. He only came to his senses after killing 300 cult members with his own hand. All of these people had died because of quite ordinary techniques that he couldn't even remember, and that's when despair took over from boredom. Even as his weaknesses became strengths, the demon lord damned Chu was in utter despair. He asked what was the use of this ring? What was the point of his training? Chu stood in front of the celestial demon and asked, was he lonely too? He had no one else to share his thoughts and worries with. He wished he could have been born and lived at the same time as the celestial demon himself. So he decided he was returning the ring to him. But then he saw something interesting and thought, is this book written by the heavenly demons themselves? Chu's pride based on his superiority over the others was trampled by the heavenly demons' labors. Chu had read the book, and was saying that it just couldn't be. Did he really use all the martial techniques differently? If someone of his level had read this, he would not have understood a word of this book. Even if they are just words, but how much meaning they contain. A demon lord who had been tormented by boredom all his life was able to find salvation in the labors of a heavenly demon. And then Chu made the decision that he would forget about all his past ambitions and elevate here to the level of his teacher, the heavenly demon. Thanks to his labors, Chu spent 50 years in the tomb. A little boy who called himself the successor of the heavenly demon appeared before him. Chu started to smile and said that it was just unbelievable, laughing. What other successor to the heavenly demon? For his age, he was indeed able to achieve outstanding skills. However, don't let the boy dare call himself the successor of the heavenly demon. Chu unleashed a crushing attack, but Chu had time to react and set up his heavenly demon's sword. Chu was surprised and asked Ju, is he laughing? And his boldness is admirable. He likes it a lot. Ju felt that this type was incredibly powerful. Chu said that although there were still people in the sect calling themselves demon advisors, there was only one who actually held that title. A godlike man, and Chu had doomed himself to death. Chu used his powers in the moment, and increased his weapon several times. Chu was surprised, for he saw a huge sword. Chu started to attack and told the boy to be more careful. Chu held his defenses to the last, and with every strike from Chu, he could feel the attack getting stronger and stronger. Chu began to say that in the heart, softness, hardness, and flexibility merge and become one. Let the boy remember that. If he doesn't recognize the change, he'd better give it all up. And it is in him that all these qualities come together. Chu fell to his knees along with his sword. Chu asked him if he could take it. The demon called the guy an idiot, and said that just by looking at his muscles, it was clear that this was not the attack to use. Let you not try to defeat him by force. Let him use his skill. Chu replied to him that he might as well not say anything. He already knows that. Chu attacked him again and asked why he was talking to himself. He should be dead by now, right? Chu got into an attack stance and Chu stopped at what he saw. The guy was using the heavenly demon limbo technique. Chu was surprised that this was the same technique. It can't be. They were just pathetic clones. Chu used all of them and attacked with a unified force. Chu started to get defensive and tried to see which of them were real. But he soon realized that they were all real. But how could the kid read the writings of a celestial demon? For Demon Lord Chu, it was not difficult to anticipate the attacks of an energized sword. At first, it may seem like multiple blows are happening at the same time. But if you look closely, there is a system to it. And in the same order, these blows must be parried. All the warriors he fought differed only in the speed of their attacks, but their essence was the same. However, the Emperor on the run turned out to be different. His outbursts were indeed simultaneous, and even the Demon Lord couldn't repel the blows falling on him from all sides at once. Chu destroyed the guy's technique, and he was the only one left. Chu stopped, and said he wasn't that easy. The demon was telling him to pull himself together. This was not enough, he needed to attack further. But the patriarch was telling him to start by taking a break and thinking things over. Zhu immediately lost his temper, and told them that the two of them were talking too much, throwing words around and messing with his head. And then something came to Zhu's mind and he thought, what if he used this technique? Chu asked, why did the guy suddenly start talking to himself? Had he lost his mind? Zhu raised his hand and said he needed to clear his mind. Chu asked him, had he decided to run away and trashed him as a coward? Immediately Zhu stopped and asked, who's that running away? Just thinking about how to defeat him. And then he finally came up with one. Zhu grabbed his sword and said he was finished. He used 2 swords, one of which was good. Chu asked, is that a simultaneous attack with 2 swords? What a cheeky guy. Zhu immediately pointed his fingers and ordered the swords to attack. Chu realized that this was clearly an unusual level of sword mastery. Each of his strikes was unimaginably cruel, and even after such an attack, his internal energy level didn't drop. And then he saw that it had even increased. Only after the double sword attack, he finally realized that this guy he hadn't even dreamed of it. Zhu immediately summoned his swords back and saw that Chu had been defeated. Zhu told him that he still couldn't believe that he was the successor of the heavenly demon. Chu told Zhu to answer just one question. Is this true? Is this really possible? Zhu asked. Does it really matter? Anyone who has fought him knows the answer to that question. Could it be that this is Chu's time? Chu tried to say something and couldn't. Chu asked him, is he going to keep sitting here? Chu replied that he didn't know. Studying the heavenly demon's writings and trying to reach his level, he dreamed of leading the sect. But now that he had appeared, everything that was important to him had lost its meaning. Chu asked if he wished to have that meaning returned to him. Chu says he's going to take the power of this place for himself, even though he doesn't know what he'll do with it. He promises he won't be bored, and he needs Chu. So it's time for him to go with him. Chu asked the guy, does he want to put meaning back into his meaningless life? He wished he had been born and lived at the same time as him. And it seems the heavens have heard his wish. Chu shook his hand and replied that he agreed and introduced himself. And he salutes the supreme heavenly demon. In the moment in the guardroom, Chonung asked the servant how the guy was doing. Did he die? And then the servant replied that he just didn't die. At the same second, Shu came over and showed the ring on his finger. Everyone was surprised and couldn't believe that he had succeeded. There's also the same guy standing behind him. Shu said, judging from their faces he thinks he did enough as evidence. Shu turned to the demon lord and said that he was breathing fresh air for the first time in half a century, after all. Shu replied that so much time has passed and nothing has changed here, Supreme. Chonan thought, is there really a demon lord standing in front of him? And he had just called this guy a supreme. Not only was he able to survive and retrieve the ring, but this man or rather, demon lord now calls him that. Shu turned to the counselor and told him not to delay in answering. Is the evidence sufficient? Chonan replied, proving himself. He is a centurion among the guards, Tang mocked Chonan, celebrating the appearance of the supreme heavenly demon with all his heart. The others were surprised from Chonan as he immediately fell on his knees in front of this guy, and they too said they salute the supreme. The left guard said, so the spirit of the heavenly demon resides in his body? Shu replied that it was so, all thanks to a ritual called the basics of summoning and binding the soul. Chu now realized that he wasn't talking to himself. Chonan said that there are many things in this world that the human mind can't comprehend that are truly unbelievable. What is the heavenly demon saying to him now? Shu replied that he had been cursing them long enough. The demon said that was right, for they were brainless idiots. Shu told them that they were his followers after all, so he expected them to have already subjugated the entire Murim. And the fact that the cult can't be found, even if you wash your eyes with some potion, is very disappointing to him. The demon told the guy that he was about to say something and let him repeat it word for word. Shu said that the heavenly demon had something to tell them. The demon said that he was a heavenly demon. The heavenly demon criticized the current state of the sect for quite a long time. After that, he ordered to equate Zhu with the title of heavenly demon and help him in every way possible. Of course, no one could question the escaped emperor's abilities, and everyone followed the sect founder's orders. Chonung asked the Supreme what he thought of the heavenly demon ring. Zhu replied that he didn't even know. At a glance it looked quite unusual. The demon asked him if he was drunk or stupid. What does he know about it? He would prove to him what a wonderful weapon his ring could be. Zhu replied to demon that he wasn't the one the warrior was talking to. The demon said that if he filled the ring with energy and threw it, it could cause incredible destruction. The ring will penetrate any enemy's defense barrier like a piece of paper. It also gives the effect of resistance to fire, and if he takes the ring in his mouth and concentrates the energy, it will neutralize any poison. Zhu replied to demon that he understood. Yes, the ring is indeed not simple. Demon replied that it was more than complicated. Zhu turned to the demon lord and said that it was time for them to go. Zhu was surprised and asked where to. Zhu replied that for the first time, they had a difficult road ahead of them. They will go, they have 12 horses to curb. Zhu was surprised and asked what other 12 horses? Chonung replied that he seemed to know who Zhu was talking about. Chonung turned to the Supreme and said that they were some of the strongest warriors of their sect. They have great potential, and they are all waiting to be the ones to bring them back to their former greatness. If the Supreme gains their trust, they will help them in the future. Zhu said that he knew, and that was why he was going to meet these demon masters. Zhu turned to the Supreme. Did they really have to use the underwater diving technique to get to that place? What if it spooks the horses and they scatter? Zhu replied that they'd have to get up close and personal first. And these guys have milk on their lips. Zhu asked, so are these the same 12 demon masters he was talking about? And that's when Zhu yelled out to these guys and asked if they could join. The guys immediately stood up and asked, who is this guy? Where did he come from here? Zhu asked if they wanted to know who he was. He thinks they are 12 demon masters, you can explain. The demon lord, will he help him in this? Zhu immediately showed his face, and said that the Supreme was in front of them. The guy answered him not to make him laugh. Zhu didn't bother with them for long, and beat them all up in a second. And thought, who the hell are these creeps? And their mission was complete. The boy wondered in his head, what kind of technique did he just use? Zhu said their skills were pretty good for their age, and this guy's got a great stealth technique. What's his name? The guy said his name, but he didn't say. He changed the subject and replied that they didn't know who this guy was either, who came and started ordering them around. Although, judging by the technique they had just used, Zhu told them that the supreme heavenly demon in front of them. The boy was surprised and asked, is it true? The guy said that they 12 demon masters can only swear an oath to someone if 2 conditions are met. 1, they must defeat them. And 2, they must be the leader of the heavenly demon sect. And both conditions have been fulfilled. From now on, the 12 demon masters would faithfully serve him. Zhu said that here they got 3 guards and a dozen masters. The demon said in a moment that the little guy looked lousy, and immediately fell to the ground. Zhu was taken straight to the guardian hall. He was unconscious for several days, and he continued to lie there. Shaolin said to Zhu that, meaning he didn't do anything when his master was in such a state. Zhu replied that it seemed that the Supreme had rushed to use a battle technique he hadn't used before. Therefore, he had fallen into a borderline state. Shaolin asked, and what kind of technique is that? Zhu replied that it was the sword of nature. The guard was surprised and asked, is this a joke? Zhu replied that this was the first time he had seen it himself, so he didn't know for sure. But he had heard that this rank was much more serious than an intangible sword. At this moment, Zhu told the others to wait for a while and let them stand where they are. The guy got angry and asked, who does this guy think they are? Even wounded, they would not surrender. Zhu realized that he couldn't beat them if he didn't give his best. He pulled out his sword and began to demonstrate to them. Zhu was surprised and thought, what is this? There was an unusual energy coming from his sword. It wasn't linear, it was more like smoke from a smoker or something. Soon, the energy became as thick as mist and filled everything around him. The 12 demon masters looked at the Supreme with admiration. Before they could even notice, their bodies lost the ability to move. The boy wondered why he was paralyzed. He can't even lift a finger. Chonan said, so he wields a sword of nature superior to the intangible? Is that possible? Zhu replied that the Supreme does not need their questions. They just need to follow his will. He would come to his senses soon. Chonan thought that at such a young age, This person had already surpassed the level of a young demon. He might be the first one like this in Murim history. The next day, Shu came to his senses and jumped out of bed like the wind. The demon said he had come to his senses. The patriarch asked the boy if he was all right. Shu replied that he was having a dream. He was in a vast and black as pitch space. Shu asked the demon, "What is the difference between sword power and energy?" The demon was surprised and asked, "Why the question?" After waking up, Shu flooded the celestial demon with questions about martial arts. Sometimes he asked questions with the look of a naive child, sometimes with youthful fervor, and sometimes with the wise look of an elder. At first it confused the celestial demon, but then he was glad he could discuss the topic with someone. Thanks to the conversation with the heavenly demon, Zhu was one step closer to his goal. His knowledge had become much more extensive than in the past. The next few days passed quietly. Zhu shared his knowledge with the 12 demon masters and taught them martial arts, and in a moment Zhu realized that he was training someone for the first time. He became better at controlling his internal energy, and learned to handle the intangible sword more freely. Zhu demonstrated his abilities on the stone in a moment. The guys were surprised and said that it was an intangible sword technique. Zhu had become more proficient in swordsmanship than anyone else. In a way, he had surpassed the heavenly demon. Zhu called all his men to him, and as the head sat arrogantly on his throne and looked at them all, the girl realized in her head that she knew the guy wasn't simple. But who would have thought that in a few days he would subdue the whole sect in one piece? And they say no one could ever get a handle on this guy. They call him the Demon Lord. Zhu asked the girl what she was staring at. The girl was surprised and replied that it was nothing. She realized that it was really an outstanding person anyway. Chonan turned to the Supreme and said that they had an important matter to discuss. What did he think about the future of the heavenly demon sect? Zhu replied, looking at him with both eyes. They all recognized him as their head. And it seems this was supposed to happen tomorrow? A duel between an old demon and a blood demon. Chonan replied that was correct. They were both talented warriors, respected in the sect. But their opinions did not coincide. That's why this fight is not just a tournament. You could say that the outcome of the battle decided the future of the entire sect. Chonan said that in fact, after the appearance of the supreme heavenly demon, this duel had become meaningless. Shu says they are wrong. The two of them epitomize the paths the sect can take. He thinks since he was able to get a better look at the potential of the heavenly demon sect. First, he wants to know the outcome of the battle. He hopes that they will follow him without forcing anyone to do anything. Chu asked the Supreme what to do with Chanwen, the basin of the Huanghe River? Of course, one should strive to subdue the territory. Zhu replied that they would conquer them. But not in a direct clash by war. Everyone did not expect such an answer and asked what?